This boy had the worst sword possible. It was literally a pencil shaped like a sword, and sometimes it would even turn into a bone. Imagine having an ability like that. It would be a complete disaster. Even the warrior himself told him to give up. There was absolutely no hope for him to become strong. After he left, the knights asked if he had been too harsh on the kid, but in this world, talent alone is not enough to survive. Here, a mental sword is a weapon born from the power of one's heart. Only 1 in a million people can manifest an overwhelming power, so neither I nor you would be able to do it. And if we can't, then imagine our little short guy with a pencil sword. Since childhood, he had suffered. He lost his family to monsters. He was found buried beneath the rubble, but this fanatic didn't know the meaning of the word give up. The warriors left, but he stubbornly chased after them, even climbing a gigantic cliff. The knights tried to help him, but the captain said no, and there he was again, thinking nobody had noticed him. Sometime later, the warriors encountered demons. They seemed to be war refugees. Ellen was hiding behind the bushes. For the first time, he saw that demons actually existed, just like him, but even now, he still didn't understand what kind of sword he had. At that moment, the man shouted, "Mental sword!" A sword appeared that was bigger than he was, and with that sword, he cut down the poor demon family. Ellen was frozen in place. He stared at the bodies in disbelief, the same captain who had told him he could never become a warrior, because this is how they live. In this world, warriors are not saints. They act according to their own interests. His sword is called the Sword of Hatred. It manifests his hatred in front of his enemies, and the reason he killed those demons was purely personal. Even when he saved Ellen 1 year ago, it was just a coincidence. Ellen ran away in desperation. When he turned back toward the soldiers, someone was crushing them into the ground. That was the Berserker, Goku. Yes, Goku, but not the Super Saiyan version, the super buff Berserker version. He had brought his Berserker sword because he and 2 allies had come here to face the Sword of Hatred. The other was a strange old man, the Golden Sword. And there was also a beautiful woman known as the Sword of Temptation. Although, honestly, that mouth of hers wasn't very tempting. The 3 of them launched a fierce attack on him. Meanwhile, Ellen kept thinking about his dream since childhood. Other people wanted to become farmers or fishermen, but he wanted to become a warrior. On the other side, the battle was getting intense. The Berserker charged with 2 swords toward the Sword of Hatred, but then, who appeared? Yes, our shield sword. After the explosion, nobody understood what had happened. He had picked up Ellen, who was lying on the ground covered in blood. This boy had tried to save his life, or maybe he was simply insane. His sword had shattered, and he probably wasn't going to survive. Ellen whispered that his dream was to save everyone. That was the reason his will kept going. After planting his sword into the ground, countless souls began to emerge from the earth. That was the power of the Sword of Hatred, to summon the souls of those it had killed. Now those souls would carry Ellen away from this place, and because he had used his sword for something other than hatred, his sword would disappear. And that's the tragic part, guys. The others arrived only after he had lost his power. So while the souls were taking Ellen away, the Sword of Hatred was left with an absolutely ordinary sword, and he would have to face 3 monsters standing right in front of him. Of course, he wouldn't survive, but a man must fight with everything he has until the very end. In a small house at the edge of the forest, a girl went out to pick fruits, but when she stepped outside, she saw a severely injured boy lying on the ground. He raised his sword, which incredibly transformed into a hammer. When you think about it, this sword power is actually broken. He just needs to learn how to use it properly. Back in the present, the spirits carry Ellen through the forest, taking him to a very safe place. Reaching their destination, they leave him on the ground, and someone shouts that an injured boy has appeared. Slowly opening his eyes, Ellen wakes up confused and tries to figure out where he is. He wonders if he's going to die, as people run towards him calling for urgent first aid. Remembering his friends, a strong emotion fills his body, giving him new hope. Lying on the ground, he reaches out his hand and uses his last strength to summon his soul blade. Suddenly, a bright light surprises everyone, materializing a weapon with a power completely unknown to them. Then the boy's true soul blade finally appears, revealing its real form for the first time to everyone. Looking at the sky, Ellen realizes that the power he so desperately sought was called conviction. With that, the awakening of the Soul Blade warrior Ellen finally happens, marking the beginning of a new legendary journey. At the battle site, the forest floor is now completely cracked and lifeless. Stuck in the earth, the warrior Hate's simple sword now lies broken, symbolizing the end of that fight. Switching to a forest, we go back in time to an event from our protagonist's past. Kneeling on the ground, a man begs for forgiveness, saying he's already given them everything he had. Leading the group, a man with an eye patch and his goons stare at him with contempt and malice. The leader then replies that it wasn't enough, wanting even more from the poor man. Suddenly, someone arrives on the scene, and the man on the ground shouts for them to wait, revealing Revealed to be Ellen, he yells that he can't forgive them for tormenting a completely innocent person. Confused by the situation, the bandit leader calls him a brat and asks what this is all about. He then tells the boy to get lost, reaching out to shove him away violently. With a look of pure determination, Ellen faces the enemy without a hint of fear. Using his foot as a spring, he launches himself forward with speed, initiating his surprise attack. Without understanding a thing, the leader's two henchmen are surprised by the little boy's sudden move. Leaping into the air, he summons his special weapon and flies toward the bandit chief. Shocked by the scene, the man with the eye patch wonders if that's really a soul blade. With his eye wide, he stares at the child approaching with the weapon wielded in his hand. Shouting, "Here I come!" Ellen prepares to deliver the final blow against the villain. With a direct hit, he strikes the enemy's head with his weapon, causing a surprisingly soft impact. To his surprise, the soul blade bends completely upon hitting the target, causing no real damage. Confused, Ellen stares at the villain, completely shocked by the failure of his surprise attack. The bandit then glares at him with an expression of pure contempt, irritated by the boy's interference. Meanwhile, the man being robbed screams in pain as he's attacked by the other henchman. Going back 30 minutes in time, the scene shifts to the house where Ellen was recovering. Now healed, Ellen was saying goodbye to the woman, thanking her for taking care of him. The woman says there's no need for thanks, as she was just fulfilling a request from Hate himself. With a worried expression, she asks if he still wants to be a warrior after all that. With a smile on his face, he confirms that he does, so he can save many other people. She then wishes for him to become a cool and powerful warrior, just like Hate himself. At that, Ellen remembers Hate fighting bravely against all the monsters to protect the defenseless child. But he also recalls the scene where the warrior killed the demon family without any mercy. Despite his confusion, his eyes fill with a new and strong determination to follow his path. Saying goodbye, Ellen runs off waving as he begins his journey to become a true hero. Observing Ellen, an old woman says he's a good boy and seems very proud of him. She then hopes that his kindness won't get in his way on his journey to become a hero. Silently, the young woman continues to watch Ellen from a distance, pensive about the future that awaits him. But with a smile, she says everything will be fine because the soul blade will always protect the boy. Back in the present, we see a moving cart carrying the two hostages of the feared bandits. Tied up in the back, the man yells that the boy's soul blade is completely useless and good for nothing. He calls him an idiot, but the boy replies that at least he tried to help and doesn't deserve to be insulted. As they're being taken by the bandits, Ellen asks why they captured such a rich and important man. With disdain, he answers that it's for money, since he's a noble from a nearby village. He explains that the bandits were after his wealth and were just waiting for him to pass by on that road. Angrily, he complains that he was a fool for mistaking the boy for a real warrior. Remembering the question, Ellen again wonders if he still wants to be a real warrior. Silently, he reflects on his dream and what it means to become a true warrior. Suddenly, the cart begins to shake violently, startling the two prisoners inside. Not understanding what's happening, they wonder if it's an earthquake as the cart sways wildly. Appearing out of nowhere, a giant hand forcefully crushes one of the horses pulling the cart. Seeing this, one of the bandits driving the transport screams in despair, not understanding what's going on. Then a giant horned creature appears before them, revealing itself as the threat that attacked them. With a loud roar, the beast glares at the bandits with its glowing eyes showing all its fury. Soon after, the creature charges forward and strikes the men with a single blow, sending them flying far away. The impact of the strike is so strong that the forest floor trembles, kicking up a lot of dust. A huge explosion follows, destroying everything around with the force of the beast's attack. When the smoke finally begins to clear, we can see the destruction caused by the monster. The cart that carried the prisoners is now completely wrecked in the middle of the forest road. Still tied up, the little boy watches the scene in fear, trying to figure out what to do to escape. The surviving bandits now face the beast, which slowly approaches to continue its massive assault. Seizing the opportunity, the boy shouts to the noble that they need to run while the beast is distracted, but the man stands up and gets in front of him, blocking his path and preventing his escape. Walking toward the beast, the noble approaches the monster, leaving the little boy behind all alone. He then surrenders to the bandits and the beast, being captured again in a surprising turn of events. Seeing the beast approach, a giant hand prepares to strike the man with full force. Not understanding, Ellen screams desperately that it's dangerous and that the noble will get hurt. But to his surprise, the beast's hand only touches the man gently, without causing any harm. With a sigh of relief, the noble turns and celebrates that he has finally found some peace. He then congratulates the beast, revealing its name is number 8 and that it did a good job. Dusting off his clothes, he turns to the bandits, showing that this was all part of a plan. With a roar, the beast sits on the ground, proving it was under the noble's control. Shocked, one of the bandits wonders if the beast was really obeying a person's commands. With a smile, the noble explains that number 8 is his trusted pet. The bandits then stare at the noble and the beast in fear, realizing they've fallen into a huge trap. Relieved, the man is thankful that everything worked out and that his plan was a great success in the end. With his eyes shining, Ellen approaches the noble, happy that he wasn't hurt in the process. He says he thought the man was friends with the beast and that something bad was about to happen. Overjoyed, the boy celebrates that he can now be set free and continue his long journey as a hero. But the noble simply kicks him away, showing him that he wasn't safe just yet. With a look of anger, the noble prepares to give his beast a final order. He then commands number 8 to attack Ellen, revealing his true cruel and merciless nature. Confused, Ellen sees the beast approaching, and the monster strikes him with a single blow. Flying through the air, the boy is thrown far away, crashing to the ground from the impact of the attack. The monster and the bandits then surround him, leaving the boy with no chance of escape. Turning to the leader, the noble asks if he's incapable of learning from his mistakes. Arrogantly, he boasts about his position, saying he is a very important noble in this region. He claims that, unlike the boy, he is superior, with a world of difference between them. Disgusted, he complains that Ellen dared to touch his body and that this is a capital offense. Watching the scene, the bandit says that nothing has changed and that Ellen is still trash. The noble questions why he would be trash, saying the bandit should be grateful just to be speaking. Angrily, the bandit leader yells that this is ridiculous and that he killed a servant. Recalling the past, he tells the story of how the noble killed one of his servants in his own mansion. He relives the scene of the servant looking at him in fear, right before being killed by his master. The noble then displayed the servant's head as a trophy, showing his cruelty to everyone. With indignation, he reveals that the noble killed the servant just for accidentally dirtying his clothes. With a heavy heart, the bandit leader reveals that the servant was his own beloved son. Hearing this revelation, Ellen stares at the scene in shock, now understanding the reason for the bandit's rage. But the noble says the case was ruled as self-defense, though the bandit retorts that he was bribed. With a sadistic smile, the noble picks his teeth, showing he doesn't care about the accusation. He then asks, "So what?" boasting about his power and how he can manipulate justice. With his eye white with rage, the bandit is filled with hatred and prepares for battle. Charging forward, he screams that he's going to kill the noble, running toward him with all his fury. With a war cry, he calls him a demonic bastard, ready to avenge his son's death. But the giant beast blocks his path, preventing him from getting close enough to attack its master. With a swift blow, the monster knocks him to the ground, defeating the bandit with ease. The noble complains that the bribery and money laundering cost a lot, and that he actually lost money. With a mocking smile, he remembers something important and looks at the fallen bandit on the ground. He says that since he was attacked, he'll have to contact the judges again to resolve the issue. Lying on the ground, the bandit hears that there will be another occasion to pay more bribes and get away with it. Watching the scene, Ellen looks at the fallen bandit with an expression of pure pity and concern. His eyes widen as he realizes the ropes that bound him were cut in the middle of the confusion. Confused, he approaches the fallen bandit and sees that the ropes on his hands have also come loose. Noticing the loose rope, Ellen realizes he is now free to finally escape. Sitting on the ground, the bandit apologizes for getting him involved, lamenting his earlier mistake. He explains that he thought Ellen was one of the noble's subordinates, and that it was a mistake. With a serious look, he says this has nothing to do with the boy and tells him to run. Worried, Ellen asks what will happen to him, but the bandit just remains silent. With a determined smile, he says he would never run, leaving his son's enemy behind. Hearing his answer, the bandit stares at the boy in surprise, not expecting such a noble attitude. He then understands the situation, remembering the moment Ellen tried to protect him from the noble. Recalling the attack, he finally realizes that the boy is a true hero with a pure heart. With a war cry, the noble points at the two of them and orders his beast to kill them all. The monster then charges toward the bandits, preparing to attack with all its might. Lying on the ground, the bandit leader curses the situation, not knowing what to do to escape. With wide eyes, the bandit stares at the scene in surprise, unable to believe what he's seeing. He sees Ellen standing in front of him to protect him, wielding his weapon with great courage. He then realizes that this was the boy's true soul blade, and that it held power. But the noble scoffs at the weapon, saying it can't even leave a scratch, and orders the beast to attack. The monster lunges forward, preparing to crush the boy with its giant clawed paw. But the boy understands that his attacks didn't work before, because he lacked a noble cause. He realizes that now, with an innocent life at stake, his weapon would finally have power. With a push, he leaps high into the air, preparing to unleash a powerful blow against the beast. Looking up, the monster and the bandits watch Ellen flying, ready for the big attack. With his soul blade glowing, he spins in the air and concentrates all his strength into a single point. Descending with speed, he prepares to hit the monster with a devastating and powerful blow. The beast faces the imminent attack, opening its mouth in a roar of surprise and fury. The bandits watch the scene in shock, unable to believe the courage and power of this small boy. Meanwhile, the noble stares at the attack with fear, realizing he had underestimated the child's power. With a serious look, the boy braces for impact, determined to protect everyone. With a single strike, Ellen shatters the beast's horn, showing the strength of his weapon. Shocked, the bandits shout that he defeated the demonic beast, not believing what they just saw. Remembering the question, the boy again wonders if he still wants to be a real warrior. With newfound power, he stands up, ready to continue his journey and protect all innocents. He understands that his weapon didn't work on the bandit because he was a good person deep down. With a serious look, he faces the noble and says that he is not like the bandit. His pure heart can distinguish between good and evil, giving his weapon power against villains. Landing on the ground, the boy prepares for the final battle, wielding his weapon with more confidence. His weapon is the blade of purity, which only works against those who are truly evil at heart. With a gleam in his eyes, he declares that this is his true and powerful hero's soul blade. Going back in time, a village is attacked by demonic beasts, forcing all the residents to flee for their lives. In the midst of the chaos, a giant monster charges through the streets, destroying everything and attacking innocent civilians. Lying on the ground, a little boy stares up at the creature's leg, completely paralyzed by fear of the imminent attack. At the last second, the monster's paw descends with speed, preparing to crush the helpless boy. But suddenly, an even bigger and more terrifying beast appears before him, shifting the focus. With a malicious gaze, the new demon stares at the boy, revealing itself as a far greater threat. In the blink of an eye, a clean strike cuts the monster in half, saving the boy's life. Revealed to be the warrior Hate, he appears to protect the boy, becoming his great hero. Back in the present, Ellen understands that a soul blade is the materialization of a single emotion. He remembers watching Hate fight, realizing his power came from a strong feeling. Then he recalls his desire to save his friends, who died tragically during the last Great War. He also wanted to punish all the bad people, seeking a world with much more justice. With his eyes shining, his greatest desire was simply to save everyone, with no exceptions. This pure will finally manifest, materializing his true and powerful soul blade for the first time in his life. Seeing the power, the bandit shouts in shock, unable to believe the young boy's transformation. The nobleman stares at the scene in a panic, disbelieving that Ellen managed to defeat his powerful beast. With his weapon in hand, Ellen floats in the air, becoming a true hero in that moment. After the battle, the demonic beast now lies on the ground, completely defeated by the young warrior. With a serious look, the boy faces the nobleman, understanding that his power comes from his strong conviction. Shifting to the king's castle, we enter a new scene, far from the forest of the battle. One of the palace guards announces that the warriors are finally returning from their mission. In the castle hallway, the three warriors who faced Hate walk together, ready to report. Goku complains that the place is suffocating, showing his discomfort with the castle's luxurious environment. Meanwhile, Midas says they need to get paid, and Ezra just mutters the word massacre. Entering the throne room, they find the king waiting for them at the end of the long hall. Turning to the group, the king greets them, saying they worked hard on their assigned mission. His name is Gabar, the king of this realm, a man with white hair and a very serious gaze. Goku replies rudely, and the king rebukes him, but Goku just says he went as far as the outskirts. He then reports that the mission was completed perfectly and that the king can rest easy now. With a serious look, the king faces the three warriors and asks them a very important question. He asks if the warrior Hate was strong, wanting to know more about his enemy's power. With a wide grin, Goku replies that he was the best, praising his opponent's strength. But the king says that he was the best in the kingdom, and that his blade of hatred was feared. Confused by the answer, the king asks what he means, not understanding Hate's change. He then explains that in the end, Hate's emotion changed, and it was no longer hatred. Back in the forest, the boy faces the monster, unaware of what happened to his hero. The beast charges to attack, but the boy defends himself with his soul blade, blocking the creature's blow. Enraged, the nobleman yells for his beast to attack with more force and earn its keep as a slave. The boy then starts taking a beating, receiving several blows from the beast and the bandits at the same time, but he realizes that he can now feel the true ability of his weapon, which is guiding him. With a determined look, he prepares to use the true power of his soul blade against all of them. Advancing against the bandits, he attacks them with his weapon, defeating the henchmen with ease now. The beast roars in fury, seeing its allies being defeated by the small, brave warrior boy. He understands that the more evil the opponent, the stronger his soul blade becomes in battle. Despite his power, Ellen realizes the beast is still too strong for him to defeat alone. Lying on the ground, the creature's paw trembles, while the ground around it is completely cracked and destroyed. The beast then rises, showing it has not yet been defeated and the battle is far from over. With a tired look, the monster faces Ellen, preparing to continue the fight. The boy then charges towards the beast, ready to strike with his soul blade once more, but the nobleman presses a remote, activating a secret device hidden in his pocket. At that, an electric current runs through the beast's collar, delivering a powerful shock to the giant monster. Screaming in pain, the creature is electrocuted, suffering the punishment of its cruel and merciless master. Ellen stares at the scene in shock, realizing the nobleman was torturing his own pet beast. The creature then begins to disintegrate, as the nobleman backs away from it with a look of contempt. Angrily, the nobleman kicks the beast's head, calling it a useless disgrace for being defeated. He then starts beating the monster, yelling that it has disgraced his name and must die. Furiously, he threatens to execute it when they return to the mansion, calling it a useless demon. The beast groans in pain, begging him to stop the torture. But the nobleman doesn't listen. With a hateful glare, he prepares to deliver the final blow, screaming for the creature to die. Back at the castle, the full moon continues to light up the night sky of the large, important city. Turning to his warriors, the king asks where the legendary and powerful warrior Hate is now. With a serious look, Goku faces his king, preparing to give the full mission report. He replies that he left him at the doctor's lab, who specializes in doing whatever he wants. With a sadistic smile, Goku complains about the king's bad taste, but the king just ignores him. Silent for a moment, the king turns and paces the throne room. Goku then asks if being a warrior isn't always like this, with so much sacrifice and pain along the way. The king explains that strong convictions come with great sacrifices, and one must do whatever it takes. With an intense gaze, he asserts that a true warrior must be capable of doing anything. Shifting to the forest, the blue sky and white clouds create a scene of peace and tranquility. The king continues, saying a warrior must be able to shake hands with the devil himself. Back in the forest, the bandit faces the boy, beginning to speak with a worried voice. He yells that the boy needs to defeat the beast, as it is a subordinate of the evil nobleman, but the boy just looks at the fallen beast on the ground, showing compassion for the creature that is suffering greatly. With a determined look, he replies, "No, you have to help those who are in pain." Lying on the ground, the beast stares at Ellen, not understanding why he didn't attack it with full force. Ellen then says that the beast is not a bad person, showing his compassion for the creature. He explains that his soul blade warned him, and that he can feel the beast's true nature. With a gentle look, he says the beast has a kind heart and was just scared. He then explains that what he struck was not the beast's conviction to be evil. By breaking its horn, he actually struck the sins the creature was forced to commit by the nobleman. Shocked, the beast stares at the boy, realizing he understood its pain and deep suffering. He then breaks the beast's collar, asking how it feels to be free from its master's control. With a smile and a peace sign, he says it must feel good to be free again. With tears in its eyes, the beast looks at Ellen, grateful for his kindness and help. Remembering the past, the beast lived in peace with its family, caring for its young in the forest. But one day, hunters captured it, separating it from its family and its happy life. It was then forced to become a slave, trampled and mistreated by its cruel captors. Ridden like a horse, it was taken to the city, where its life of suffering began. Forced to attack innocents, it became a tool of destruction in the hands of its cruel master. With tears in its eyes, the beast looks at the boy, showing its gratitude that he understood its pain. It then lies on the ground, making a low, sad sound, as if saying goodbye. Watching the scene, the nobleman glares at the fallen beast, while the bandits prepare for battle. The bandit leader then turns to the boy, with an expression of surprise and concern. Ellen then turns and notices the nobleman is trying to escape in the middle of the confusion. Angrily, the bandit leader yells that he's getting away and orders all his men to catch him, but the beast holds the boy with its giant hands, stopping him from from joining the chase. It then places him on its back, preparing to help capture the fleeing nobleman. Confused, the boy asks if the beast is trying to help, surprised by the creature's action. With a roar, the beast confirms that it is, showing its alliance with Ellen and the bandits. It then hurls him in the nobleman's direction, using its strength to help capture the villain. Running desperately, the nobleman tries to escape, but the boy flies towards him with speed. Looking back, he sees the boy approaching, ready to strike and prevent his escape. With his soul blade in hand, Ellen prepares to deliver the final blow against the nobleman. Screaming in panic, the nobleman faces the imminent attack, knowing there's no escape. With a smile on his face, the boy says, "This was the punishment for the truly evil." Remembering the bandit's son, he understands that justice must be served for all the innocent, and also for the beast, which was forced to do terrible things against its own will and heart. With one final blow, he defeats the nobleman, causing an explosion of light that shoots up to the heavens. In the blue sky, an intense glow marks the end of the battle and the young hero's victory. After the fight, the bandit leader and the beast look at the boy, now as his new allies. Turning to them, Ellen says he has finally made a very important decision for his future. Remembering hate, he says he can't become a warrior like him, who uses hatred. He understands that in this world there are good and bad people, and that justice is for everyone. He realizes there are good beasts like number 8, who deserve to be saved and protected too. With a determined look, he declares he will become a warrior who saves everyone, without exception. With a confident smile, he promises that one day he will stand proudly before hate as an equal. He turns, ready to begin his journey, with a new purpose and a new conviction in his heart. The bandit then informs him that if he's going to become a warrior, he'll have to go to the capital. The bandit then offers to take him to the capital and tells him to ask for anything he needs. Surprised, the boy asks if it's true, unable to believe the generosity of his new friend and ally. With a serious look, the bandit confirms that it is, showing his support for the young hero. Remembering his son, the bandit smiles, seeing in the boy a new hope for the future. Confused, Ellen stares at the bandit, not understanding the reason for his sudden, drastic change in attitude. The bandit then kneels before the boy, with an expression of pure gratitude on his face. Thanking him, he bows, showing his respect and admiration for the young hero who saved him. Back at the castle, the full moon continues to light up the sky, creating a mysterious scene. The king is informed that Goku's group has returned, and he receives the news coldly. With a sadistic smile, he tells them to begin preparations, wickedly planning his next move. Meanwhile, Ellen and his new friends eat together, celebrating their victory and new friendship. With a smile on his face, Ellen prepares for the warrior exam, ready for the challenge. Inside an old stone tower, a brutal test was underway for a group of young warriors. Clutching his chest tightly, a man broke into a cold sweat, struggling to breathe. Revealing a severe wound on his body, their master lay on the floor, writhing in agony. Even injured, he stared at his student and furiously shouted for her to finally stab him. At this, the pink-haired girl froze completely, looking at everyone with anger and confusion. With a panicked look, she said she couldn't go on with this madness. Taking a step forward, she stated loudly that she didn't want to attack him anymore. The master then replied that she has what it takes, insisting they overcome the challenge. Seeing she wouldn't react, he continued his lecture, explaining that a blade is meant for attacking. He then said that all the warrior apprentices from their village don't know the first thing about reality. Crushed by his words, the girl broke down in tears, screaming about how much she hated all of this. In the midst of the chaos, little Ellen appeared at the window, observing everything in silence. Noticing his presence, the two looked up, completely surprised and speechless. Getting closer, the ash-blonde boy simply waved and said hello. Far away in the bustling port town of Regis, other challenges were just beginning to arise. Arriving at the port, little Ellen was ecstatic about the huge number of anchored ships. Suddenly, he was startled by a huge man and glared at him, ready to react. Observing a group of warriors, he commented to his companion on how fierce they looked. The old man with the eye patch explained that they needed to take a boat to reach the capital. According to him, around this time of year, warriors from various villages gathered in that location. Then, the man said his goodbyes and told Ellen he would leave him there, asking him to become a warrior. Waving with a smile, Ellen bid farewell to his companion who had brought him to the port. Now, alone on the docks, he mentally prepared for what lay ahead. With a quick gesture, he touched his own face, his expression shifting to a serious one. Looking forward with determination, he affirmed that since he decided to become a warrior, he would take it seriously. A short time later, the young boy finally entered the city, ready to start his new journey. As he entered, his excitement exploded, and he shouted in absolute awe of everything he was seeing. Entering a large hall, he found himself in a giant market, crowded with people everywhere. All around, vendors advertised their goods, like fresh fish and hot food. Even knights in full armor displayed their swords for potential buyers at the fair. Running excitedly through the market, little Ellen looked at all the stalls with a huge smile. Just then, a friendly vendor stopped him and asked if he was also a warrior apprentice. Striking a confident pose, Ellen asked if he really looked like a reliable warrior to him. The vendor then explained that this was the adventurer's market, where everyone bought necessary equipment. Seeing the boy's interest, the man asked if he needed anything for his journey. At that moment, Ellen saw a pair of gloves on the counter and was mesmerized. Staring at the item with intense desire, he caught the vendor's attention, who asked if he wanted to buy them. The man then said the gloves were essential for getting a firmer grip on a sword. Hearing that explanation, Ellen's green eyes shone with a sudden, unshakable determination. He suddenly remembered that the powerful warrior Hate also wore identical gloves. Decided, he said he'd take the item, but the vendor charged 200,000 gold coins. Completely shocked by the absurd price, he complained that it was far too expensive for him to afford. The vendor laughed and admitted to being a con man, as he didn't care about tricking adventurers. Disappointed, Ellen leaned over the counter, sadly looking at the gloves he so desperately wanted. Meanwhile, the vendor just watched him from a distance, showing no remorse for the situation. With a new plan, Ellen turned to the vendor and asked if he could do him a favor. The man then pointed to a tower and asked him to investigate the strange rumors coming from there. Curious about the proposal, the ash-blonde boy asked what kind of strange rumors they were. Hearing about a mad slasher, he refused the request, but the vendor offered the gloves in exchange. Wearing the new gloves, Ellen began to climb the dangerous stone tower with difficulty. His face strained with effort, he gripped the stones tightly to keep from falling. As he climbed, he complained out loud that the price for these gloves was way too high. And that's how he reached the top, finding the girl and the injured master. Seeing the boy suddenly appear at the window, the two stood completely still, unable to understand. Waving his hand, he simply greeted the two with a calm and casual hello. Startled, the girl shouted, asking who he was and calling him a thief, causing a commotion. Hanging from the window, he told her he wasn't a thief and was just doing a favor. Changing the subject, the boy struggled to climb up and finally enter the room through the window. Then he told the girl that you shouldn't point dangerous things at people. Now sitting on the windowsill, he looked carefully at the injured man lying on the floor. Analyzing the wound up close, he saw the man clutching his own bloody chest tightly. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Ellen noticed the bleeding was heavy and the cut was very deep. Looking closer, he also noticed that the master's body was completely covered in scars. Recalling the vendor's story, he remembered the rumor about a psychopath who stabbed people. Putting all the pieces together, the boy finally realized in a panic that the terrible rumor was true. But before he could react, the pink-haired girl struck him with a blow and knocked him out the window. As he plummeted from the tower, he heard her screaming for him not to tell anyone what he had seen. Falling uncontrollably, little Ellen despaired at the enormous distance between him and the ground. With a threatening look, she coldly warned him that he saw absolutely nothing that day. Terrified by the fall, the ash-blonde boy covered his face, waiting for the final impact. A moment later, he hit the ground hard, kicking up a large cloud of dust. Back in the tower, the girl explained that she knocked him into a bush because he just seemed like a curious kid. Hearing her explanation, the master said he understood and asked them to start the training again. Then, an energy began to manifest in the girl's hand as she prepared for battle. In that same instant, the master ordered her to finally draw her powerful soul blade now. With a shocked expression, the pink-haired girl stood completely paralyzed by the order she had received. Breaking into a cold sweat, the master insisted on the order, yelling with all his might for her to stab him. Changing scenes, the sky remained completely clear and blue, with no rain clouds in sight. Meanwhile, little Ellen landed on his back in a soft bush, looking up. Sitting up, he realized the rumor was true, but it didn't seem that dangerous. Then, he looked at his hands and remembered the gloves were payment for the mission. Recalling the scene, he remembered the master's harsh words about warrior apprentices being fools. Then, the image of the girl's hateful scream appeared clearly in his mind. As he connected the dots, a nagging doubt about his own desires began to surface. Reflecting on it, he questioned if his dream of being a warrior was just for the gloves. After a moment, the ash-blonde boy seemed to finally find his true answer. Still on the ground, he looked back at the immense stone tower with a new perspective. Then, with a new purpose, he showed off the gloves with a very determined smile on his face. Showing his confidence, a small smile formed, indicating he had made a decision. Getting up, he touched the tower wall, preparing to climb it all over again. Using his feet for support, he began the second ascent ascent with renewed determination. As he climbed with a smile, he said that his dream couldn't be just for an item. Remembering his past, he vowed to become a warrior who saves everyone in the world. With this new conviction, he shouted that he wasn't done yet, climbing even faster. Meanwhile, a new threat was rapidly approaching the area, completely unknown to anyone. Arriving at the base of the tower, a mysterious man finally set foot on the ground of the strange forest. Accompanied by knights, he asked with a smile if this was the place with the disturbing rumors. Looking ahead with malice, he announced that he was there to deliver justice to the villains. Far away in the adventurers' market of the port village of Regus, the routine continued as usual. Approaching the vendor, his son asks why he gave the gloves to that unknown boy. With a bandage on his nose, the young boy keeps staring at his father, waiting for an explanation. He then insists, asking why his father told that same story again to a stranger. The vendor explains that since the castle is closed, someone needs to sneak in to check the rumors. Remembering the scene, he says that since Ellen was small, he thought the boy could get in easily. With a smile on his face, he adds that the merchandise was on clearance anyway. The vendor then tells his worried son that if he's right, it won't be dangerous at all. Still, the boy remains silent, not quite convinced by his father's answer. Back at the tower, Ellen's climb is brutally interrupted by a loose piece of rock. As he grabs onto it, the stone crumbles in his hand, causing the boy to nearly plummet from the wall. Startled, the piece of rock slips through his fingers and falls toward the ground. With no strength left to continue, the boy falls to the ground, panting and completely unable to get up. Lying on the grass, he complains aloud that he's hungry and too weak to keep climbing. But in that same instant, his green eye notices something moving in the tower window above. Lying on the ground, Ellen spots a group of knights approaching on the dirt road. With a sinister smile, the squad's leader showed he had anything but friendly intentions. Still confused, the ash-blonde-haired boy wonders who those people could be. Shifting to the port, the commotion in the village of Regus seemed much greater than usual. Amidst the crowd, the knights cleared a path, shouting for everyone to get out of the way. Leading the group, the warrior Lever Gujungro stared at the villagers with a look of utter superiority. At this, the citizens comment that a real warrior has finally shown up to help. Soon after, they realize the man is actually an elite officer of the order. Approaching him, the vendor questions the reason for his visit, but he says he's there on business. With a swift, firm gesture, the warrior points his finger forward menacingly. Then, he reveals he heard rumors about a villain in the castle who likes to stab people. Hearing this, the equipment vendor falls silent and stares at the officer with concern. Trying to intervene, the man says this is a village matter and they would handle it themselves. Without hesitation, the warrior grabs the vendor's face with great force, silencing him instantly. He then throws him violently to the ground, surprising everyone there. In the midst of the confusion, the son screams in despair as he sees his own father being assaulted on the ground. With a sadistic smile, the warrior warns that he's the only one asking questions and demands an answer. Even while being forcefully held down, the vendor refuses to cooperate with the violent man. Just then, another warrior interjects, shouting for everyone to hear that he saw what happened. Flashing back in time, he says he was passing through the same area just a few hours before the incident. Walking down the road, he happened to spot the mysterious and solitary stone tower from a distance. Suddenly, he witnessed the exact moment young Ellen was thrown from the window. Next, he saw the girl in the window, watching the boy fall toward the ground. Right after the fall, she simply turned her back and went back inside the dark tower. Back in the present, he accuses her of trying to kill the boy by throwing him from there. Shocked, the vendor thinks that the witch of the tower couldn't possibly be a child acting during the day. Hearing the account, the warrior cracks a sinister smile and says the matter is settled. Summoning his knights, he yells that they must all go to eliminate the villain in the tower now. Far away, the sun was finally beginning to set behind that mysterious, isolated stone tower. Arriving at the location, the warrior touches the wall, preparing for the impending invasion. As they scale the tower, one of the men complains about the difficulty, as the door was tightly locked. With great effort, one warrior asks if they're sure she's really in there, but his companion confidently assures him that she's hidden somewhere in that tower. He reveals that the Order of Knights received direct orders to capture the deserter witch. By doing so, they'll gain a valuable connection with the powerful Lord Graphon, the one who ordered it. Climbing with difficulty, one of them complains that he feels heavier than usual today. At this, the knight looks back, trying to understand what was so strange. He then finds little Ellen hitching a ride in his bag, terrifying the other man. Hanging there, the boy asks who they are and how long they've been hanging on the wall. Annoyed by his nerve, the knight tells him to hurry up, as he can't use his hands. Uncaring, the boy simply takes a water canteen from inside the bag. Then, he drinks the water calmly, making the man even more furious with his brazen attitude. While all this was happening, the sun was slowly setting, painting the sky in an orange hue. Finally, after a long struggle, the the three of them exhaustedly reach the tower's window ledge. Thanking them with a smile, Ellen calls the men kind uncles who now want revenge. As he approaches the window, little Ellen notices a strange movement coming from inside the room. Suddenly, his green eyes widen completely as he witnesses the scene unfolding right there. Watching it all, he sees the pink-haired girl advancing on the master with her weapon. A moment later, she strikes the man with a direct blow to his back, piercing through his body. Shocked by the scene, the knights yell that the rumor about the killer witch was true. But little Ellen notices something strange about the situation, shaking his head at what happened. Looking more closely at the wound, he notices that it wasn't bleeding at all. In the same instant, the cut begins to heal on its own, leaving everyone at the window speechless. Then, they realize the girl's weapon is a powerful soul blade. Turning to the window, the girl angrily asks who they are and what they want. Without wasting time, the two knights jump into the room, already preparing to attack. Wielding their swords, they warn her that a 2-on-1 fight will be very difficult for her. Staring at the pair, she calls them thieves, but they reveal themselves as knights of the Graphon Order. Upon hearing the order's name, the girl falls silent and stares at the two of them seriously. At this, they reveal that Lord Graphon personally ordered the capture of the deserter who fled. Charging forward, the knights cover the room's floor in a swift dash. Shouting for her to surrender, they demand that she become the sacrifice for their success. With a shocked expression, the pink-haired girl stares at the two men, unsure how to react. At that moment, little Ellen says he finally understood what was really happening there. Still hanging, he explains that she used the blade to heal the old man, leaving everyone confused. He then deduces that the healing ability distorted the rumors, but the knights get angry. Hearing this, the girl just stares at the boy from a distance, surprised by his quick conclusion. With a smile, Ellen asks if she wasn't a bad person after all. Hearing the question, the girl's eyes fill with tears, completely touched by him. But one of the knights gets angry and yells that he can't take this weird situation anymore. With a quick movement, he grabs the boy's clothes and throws him into the air. Being tossed, Ellen is now upside down and watches the scene in total despair. Shouting, he warns the knights that this lady is actually a very good person, but they reply that they don't care, and that anyone who interferes will pay dearly. Desperate, he yells that they were getting along just fine until now, trying to make them stop the attack. But the knights don't remember any of that, falling silent for a brief moment. Then, they charge forward anyway, using the boy as a weapon to attack the defenseless girl. Yelling for them to stop, a mysterious energy begins to manifest in the little boy's hands. He then manifests his blade of purity, and lands a powerful blow on one of the knights. Seeing this, the other knight is completely paralyzed, unable to believe what just happened. He tries to understand how such a small boy could land such a strong attack. Watching from a distance, the pink-haired girl is also surprised by his hidden power. Then, she realizes his weapon is also a soul blade, just like hers. Taking the full impact, the man is left completely stunned, not understanding what hit him. Outside, the tower remained silent as the battle unfolded within. Suddenly, the top of the tower explodes, sending the two knights flying far away. At the window, Ellen says it's strange because the nice uncles who helped him were attacked. Seeing his confusion, the girl approaches and asks who he really is. Realizing her question, he turns and says he hadn't introduced himself to her yet. Then, he introduces himself as Ellen, the future warrior who will save everyone from evil. Hearing the introduction, the pink-haired girl is speechless, staring at him in confusion. Pointing at the master, Ellen demands that he explain the whole situation to them now. Seeing the swords on the floor, he remembers that the order's captain is Lord Graphon. Turning to the girl, he asks why her father gave the order for her capture. Hearing the question, she clenches her fist tightly, showing her anger about the subject. Then she glares at the boy with a furious look, preparing to answer the serious accusation. Not understanding her reaction, Ellen just repeats the word father, trying to connect the new information. As night fell, the defeated knights fled desperately through the dark, dense forest. Running hard, they complain that they didn't know someone so strong existed in that tower. Suddenly, one of them stops running and looks back, sensing a strange presence. A moment later, they find their leader, who asks why they are there like that. With eyes red with fury, he glares at the two men, expecting a quick answer. Seeing his subordinates on the ground, he asks if they are really apprentices of the Order of Knights. Crying in fear, one of them tries to say they were acting in the name of justice and the Lord, but the leader cuts him off and denies everything, leaving the knight completely confused and terrified. With a dark smile, he warns them that what they did was not real justice. Grabbing them both by the neck, he lifts them off the ground without the slightest effort or difficulty. Flashing back, he remembers being approached by the villagers earlier. While the father held him, the vendor's son asked him to look at the situation again. Observing the scene, the warrior noticed the people's strong conviction to protect protect the girl. He then realized she had the villagers' trust more than he could have ever imagined. With this memory, he says that no matter the order, taking away someone the people trust is wrong. Smiling maliciously, he adds that, as a warrior, that attitude doesn't look good publicly. So he tells them he needs more justification and will give them the perfect role in this. Back at the tower, little Ellen asks the master to explain what was happening. Pointing to the swords on the floor, he points out that the captain of that order is Lord Grafon. Turning to the girl, he asks why her father ordered her capture. Hearing the question, the pink-haired girl clenches her fist tightly in anger. With a furious look, she just apologizes, unable to answer the boy's question directly. Heading for the door, she says she can't talk about it and leaves the room. Completely confused by her reaction, Ellen just repeats the word father, trying to understand the whole situation. Later, under the moonlight, the conversation between the two finally continued in the tower. Placing a bandage on his arm, the master asks if he knows the Grafon family. Sitting at the table, Ellen says he doesn't know the warriors well, except for the Great Hate. Then, the master explains that they are an elite family, having served the king for decades. According to him, the current leader, Dan de Grafon, possesses a strength never before seen in their entire lineage. Shocked by the revelation, the boy asks if this terrible person is really her father. With a serious look, the master confirms that he is, revealing the harsh truth to the boy. Soon after, he tells him that the girl was abandoned by her family when she was very young. He reveals it all happened because she couldn't manifest a soul blade as a child. Because of that, her father disowned her, expecting her to live forever in that isolated village. Hearing the story, Ellen remembers when he first arrived at the tower and found the two of them. But one day, against all odds, she finally managed to awaken her special power. With this news, the family was overjoyed and called her back to the royal capital. Then, Ellen excitedly says he's also going there to become a great warrior. From this, he deduces that she ran away, which is why her father is now hunting her. Still, the master comments that she won't talk about what happened back then. He then states that only one thing is certain about the whole complicated situation between them. Because of a trauma, she became terrified of using her soul blade. Remembering her past, the girl's face is covered in sweat and visible panic. Recalling her words, she had called all the warrior aspirants in that village complete fools. Right after, she screamed with all her might how much she hated the life of a warrior. Putting the pieces together, little Ellen finally understands the reason for his new friend's suffering. Revealing his chest, the master explains that he had her train by healing him, though he admits it was extreme. Thinking aloud, Ellen says that kind of training seems like it would only worsen the girl's trauma. Despite her fear, the master reveals she always used her blade to heal injured people. Finding an injured boy in the forest, she approaches him without a moment's hesitation. With an intense glow, her weapon manifests and begins to heal the young boy's wound. Using her power, she manages to completely close the wound, saving the poor child's life. With that, he asserts that she never left an injured person behind, even when she was afraid, and so, the rumor of a witch in the tower began to spread among everyone. With tears in her eyes, the girl hears the master say that she is a special child. With total confidence, he says he believes in her, strengthening the spirit of the young and brave warrior. The next day, a new threat approached the tower, bringing even more unexpected trouble. Outside, the master faces the squad of knights with a worried look. With a smile, the group's leader says it's been a long time since they've seen each other. Facing the warrior, the master asks what he's doing there with all those armed men. Ignoring the question, he announces that he has come to arrest Jean Grafon in the name of the royal order. Hearing her name, the pink-haired girl freezes completely, unsure how to react. Taking a step forward, the pink-haired girl finally decides to face the squad of knights. With a sadistic smile, the warrior says she's finally decided to show up for the battle. She then asks why he's arresting her, demanding to know the real reason for the pursuit. She states that she didn't desert, as she never even took the exam to become an official warrior. Agreeing with her, he says there's nothing illegal about that, leaving her even more confused. But he reveals he's heard a rumor about a villain in the tower who enjoys stabbing people. Scoffing at the story, she says she would normally ignore a false rumor, but he cuts her off. Taking a step, he says the rumor caught his attention because it was about her. Moving closer, he accuses her of enjoying the of enemies, leaving her completely in shock. Her face frozen in fear, she stares at the warrior, reliving the memories of her past. Watching from a distance, the master seems to understand what was about to happen. Little Ellen just repeats the word not understanding what was being said. Laughing at the situation, the man reveals that her first mission was to learn how to torture prisoners. Remembering her past, the image of a tied-up man emerges clearly in her mind. With her weapon in hand, she remembers her training to attack defenseless people in the prison. In that dark dungeon, her father's shadow stood before her, about to give the cruel order. With gleaming eyes, he would order her to stab the prisoners with her healing blade. That way, she used her power to keep them from dying during the continuous torture. With tears streaming down her face, the young girl was forced to obey her father's direct orders. So, she would repeat the act over and over, striking the bound prisoner before her endlessly. Following the terrible order, she plunged the blade into the man's body once more with force. Again and again, she would injure the prisoner's leg, obeying her father's orders. Right after, she would strike him in the back, continuing the endless cycle of pain and healing. In total desperation, the bound prisoner begged her to please just end his life quickly. Hearing his plea, the girl would break down in tears, completely shattered inside by the situation. Returning to the present, the warrior says the apprentices who looked for her yesterday have mysteriously vanished. At that, Ellen remembers the two men he himself defeated in the tower earlier. The warrior then uses the villager's testimony as proof against her. He mentions the rumor of the tower witch who loves to stab people for fun, and he also cites the report that she pushed a boy off a cliff for no reason. Faced with all the accusations, he announces he has no choice but to arrest her. Her face covered in tears, the pink-haired girl collapses to the ground, completely hopeless. But the master steps forward, preparing to defend his apprentice with all his might. With a furious shout, he asks what they put that poor child through. In that same instant, he lunges forward, but the warrior lands a blow to his neck. Held tightly, the master hears the warning not to interfere in all this. Seeing this, the girl gets up, wielding her weapon to protect her master from the threat. Remembering his words, she recalls that she would become a great warrior one day, despite everything. He had described her as a kind-hearted child, one who felt the pain of others more deeply. But the image of the prisoner begging for death haunted her mind with great force and clarity. Unable to bear the pressure, she drops her weapon to the ground, giving up the fight completely. Ignoring her apology, the master watches her, unable to hide his concern for her. Crying, the girl says she doesn't have what it takes to be a true warrior. She continues, saying she's not a good person like her master thinks she is. Watching from afar, Ellen sees she has drawn her sword, wondering if she really is. Shouting in anger, the vendor's son denies that such a terrible person lived in the village. Remembering the past, he shouts to everyone that she healed his wound last time. With all his conviction, he states that there's no way she could be a bad person. Then, one of the villagers says the boy was deceived by the witch, telling him not to oppose the warrior. Hugging his son, the vendor tries to calm the boy down in the midst of all the chaos. With a victorious smile, the warrior realizes his plan to frame her has worked perfectly. Thinking about his strategy, he reflects that to create the lie, he mixed in some truths. He himself invented that she tore enemies, fled her unit, and took care of the missing apprentices. Being a port town, he knew the rumors would spread easily among the locals. With everything going as planned, he smiles with satisfaction, declaring the mission a success. Turning to his soldiers, he warns them that the villain is about to attack with full force. But at that moment, a heavy footstep approaches, interrupting the warrior's order to attack. Seeing that scene, a new determination appears in the pink-haired girl's eyes. Appearing in front of her, little Ellen points his blade of purity, ready to defend her. With a confident smile, he states with absolute certainty that Jean is a very good person. With tears in her eyes, the pink-haired girl is moved by his actions. Staring at the boy, the warrior asks with disdain what that little brat is doing in the middle of this. Taking a step forward, he warns that his sword can distinguish between good and bad people. With a mocking smile, the man tells the boy to stop playing around and go somewhere else. But before he can react, Ellen strikes the warrior's face with a blow from his hammer. Upon impact, an intense red glow manifests at the exact point of the powerful blow. In that same instant, the warrior is thrown far away, spinning uncontrollably through the air. Mouth agape, the master watches the scene, completely shocked by the boy's strength. The knights of the squad are also paralyzed, unable to believe what they just saw before them. The young girl's eyes also go wide, surprised by the power he just displayed. From the ground, the villagers shout with concern, asking if the warrior is okay after that hit. Ignoring the commotion, little Ellen prepares to continue the fight against all his enemies. Turning to the vendor, he calls him Uncle, surprising him with the sudden interaction. Remembering his promise, he says he was there to fulfill the favor favor in exchange for the gloves. Hearing that, the vendor falls silent, completely speechless at the important revelation. Wielding his hammer firmly, he faces the warrior and states that the rumor isn't true. Then, he points his weapon at the man on the ground, accusing him of being a bad person. Seeing the boy's power, the warrior says it's interesting that a brat has a soul blade, but with a dark smile, he warns that in the name of justice, he will take action. In that same instant, he glares at him with hatred and sentences him to death without a second's hesitation. On the ground, the knight's body begins to slowly dissipate into dark smoke. Seeing this, Ellen stares at him with disdain, finding the whole situation a great embarrassment for him. Unsatisfied, the knight says it's humiliating to fight a mere aspiring warrior. He then reveals his complete soul blade, confessing it's embarrassing to have to use it against a child. Undaunted, little Ellen just grips his weapon tighter, ready for the next round. Staring at his opponent, he analyzes every move, looking for an opening to attack with full force again. For a brief moment, he closes his eyes to concentrate, completely ignoring the enemy's presence. Then, he opens his eyes again, showing even greater determination than before. But suddenly, his expression changes to one of complete surprise as he notices something very strange. Looking around, Ellen realizes the knight has simply vanished, disappearing without a trace. He then turns, noticing the enemy's weapon has appeared out of nowhere right behind him. From an advantageous position, Lever comes down with full force for a surprise attack the boy didn't expect. Acting quickly, Ellen uses his hammer to block the blow, but gets grazed. After the impact, he plants his foot firmly on the ground, preparing for an immediate counterattack, and with a quick spin, he charges towards the knight to deliver his next blow. In the middle of his advance, Ellen stops suddenly, realizing his target has vanished again. Searching around, he sees the knight is gone, leaving only faint marks on the ground. Then the knight's voice echoes, saying it's hard to follow his escape movements. The knight then warns that the second he blinks will be enough, because in that brief moment he has enough time to hide and prepare a new strike. Seizing the opening, the knight moves at high speed, striking from all sides. With no chance to defend, Ellen is brutally hit and thrown to the ground by the force of the blow. In the distance, two onlookers comment that the boy deserves to get hurt for challenging Lord Lever. Soon after, the crowd starts to shout, calling the woman a witch and cursing the boy. But others shout words of support, telling the little warrior to eliminate all the enemies there. Leaning on his hammer, Ellen just tries to catch his breath, visibly exhausted after the series of blows. Then the knight's voice returns, asking if he doesn't regret the price of his convictions. And the knight finishes, saying the boy's whole situation is truly pathetic and useless. He then vows to end it all quickly, advancing on Ellen with his finishing blow. But at the last moment, Ellen turns, sensing a new presence suddenly appearing right behind him. Suddenly, small blue fragments appear out of nowhere, breaking the silence and floating in the air. Surprised, the knight's eyes widen as he notices the unexpected approach from behind him. Moving very fast, Ellen appears from behind and grabs Lever tightly before he can react. With his arm around his neck, Ellen shouts that he's finally caught him with no chance of escape. Using the momentum, he easily spins him and throws him over his shoulder. Immediately after, he uses his hammer for a strike, slamming the knight into the ground. Being dragged, Lever uses his feet to brake, desperately trying to stop sliding on the dirt. As he gets up, he looks at his own body, realizing a strange soul blade has hit him. Remembering the past, Ellen recalls that Jean's ability has the power to warm hearts. That's why he yells that he won't be intimidated by false rumors, and that he won't back down. Hearing this, Lever stares at him in silence, analyzing the unshakable determination in the little boy's eyes. Then he says that the foundation of a warrior is precisely the ability to protect one's convictions. Looking at the crowd, he says those aspiring warriors are fools blinded by the very rumors they spread themselves. At that moment, Lever admits that the boy before him is a true and quite decent warrior, and he concludes by saying that he is different from someone who abandoned her convictions, referring to Jean. Looking at his own hand, the knight notices the ability that unexpectedly struck him. Then he says he's changed his mind because the battle is about to get much more interesting. Hearing the threat, Jean freezes, an expression of pure dread and despair on her face. With wide eyes, she begins to remember a traumatic moment from her dark past. Going back to her childhood, she remembers always wanting to create a soul blade to be acknowledged by her father. That's why she trained every day, striving to become strong and gain his recognition. Focused on this goal, she continued to dedicate herself fully to achieve the power she so desperately wanted. Back at the family castle, the reunion with her father didn't go as she had hoped. He simply looks at her, saying that her newly awakened ability is completely useless and weak. Dande then says he came to see her soul blade, but the result was disappointing. With a look of contempt, he states that her power is trash. He then suggests that she abandon her weak convictions to awaken a stronger weapon. Back in the forest, knights with bows shout that they have orders to capture Jean at all costs. Immediately after, several arrows are fired in her direction, as she is completely surrounded with no way out. At the last second, she jerks her head aside, narrowly escaping the arrows. With wide eyes, Jean stares at the scene before her, completely paralyzed by pure fear. Seeing she was saved, she realizes Darien used his own body to shield her from the arrow. Desperate over his wound, she yells that she needs to use her powers to treat him right now. Then a painful memory surfaces, showing the suffering past of her great protector. With tears in her eyes, she recalls everything he went through unjustly because of her, but he stops her from healing him, holding her arm and saying the treatment isn't necessary. Kneeling before her, he holds her hands and says, "Everything must have been so hard." Confused by his words, Jean just stares at him in silence, trying to understand the whole situation. Crying, he continues, saying she went through everything without knowing the terrible things he did. In another memory, Darien appears wounded, looking at his own body after receiving several fatal blows. Recalling the past, he says she is a child with a very good and kind heart. He then explains that swords were made to hurt, but hers is a very different case. Holding her blade, he says that her sword heals because she cares about pain. For that reason, he claims her sword is stronger than anyone else's. Suddenly, a wooden sword strikes her on the head, a solid blow. Going back in time, Darien tells a young Jean that she lost the training session again. With a smile, he says he had already told her to always aim for his head. Sitting on the ground, she replies that she didn't do it because he would feel a lot of pain from the blow. Hearing this, Darien just looks at her with a gentle smile, understanding the girl's concern for him. Shifting to nighttime, a lonely tower stands out under the light of a large, full moon. Inside, Jean says her soul blade doesn't suit a true warrior, feeling bad about it. While he tends to her wounds, she laments being weak for having a sword that doesn't defeat. Crying, she says that maybe she should abandon her convictions, just like her father said before. But Darien replies that it's precisely because of that mentality that she is so kind to everyone. Still with tears in her eyes, the girl just listens to him in silence, absorbing his every word. Then he tells her he was a doctor, but was expelled for treating wounded enemy soldiers, and that his belief that there's no distinction between patients remains the same to this day. Bandaging her knee, he says that saving people by treating wounds is the same as fighting. The young girl remains silent, reflecting on the whole story he just told. Soon after, he turns and asks what she thinks about everything he said. With a smile, Darien asks if he seems like a weak person to her in any way. With wide eyes, Jean realizes his true strength isn't what she imagined. Back in the present, her healing ability finally reaches Darien, ending the girl's long flashback. Driven by her convictions, she runs to the battlefield, leaving Darien behind, calling out to her. Meanwhile, Ellen is brutally struck by a series of rapid blows, with no chance to defend himself. Feeling a strange pain, he looks at his own arm and notices a purple mark spreading. With a serious look, Lever points to his arm, warning him about the wound he sustained. He then warns that his arm has been infected with poison and that he will never use it again. Seeing the boy nearly defeated, Lever prepares his final blow, lamenting that the fight is ending so quickly. Gritting his teeth, Ellen refuses to give up and tries to resist the spreading poison, but suddenly, his eyes light up as he notices someone's presence arriving from behind to help. At the last second, Jean appears and activates her healing ability, enveloping Ellen in her healing energy. Completely surprised, he turns and shouts her name, unable to believe what's happening. With her eyes closed, the girl concentrates on using all her healing power on him. Focusing her energy, her hand begins to heal the wound on the little warrior's arm. Watching the wound, Ellen realizes the poison in his arm is slowly being cured by her. As the healing continues, he says he honestly can't understand the girl's selfless attitude. Completely confused, he asks why she would go so far to help someone like him in this situation. Not knowing what to say, Jean just looks away, thinking of an answer to his question. Then with a smile, she answers that it's because he is a true warrior, above all else. And she adds that you don't need a reason to simply help people in need nearby. Remembering the past, she recalls Darien stating that she too can become a great warrior. In another memory, a small child cries, desperately calling for the help of their dear older sister. Back in the present, she mentally apologizes to Darien, finally making a very important decision right there. In another flashback, she explains that she didn't tell the truth so as not to betray those who believed in her. She then remembers his comforting words when Darien said that everything must have been so hard. Holding her sword firmly, she thanks him for believing in her and her potential. With a new look in her eyes, she begins to say there's something important she will no longer do. She then finishes the sentence, declaring to everyone that she will no longer run from her problems. Hearing her declaration, Ellen smiles, proud of his companion's new and unshakable conviction. In the distance, Darian watches everything with a serious and very worried expression about how the situation is unfolding. Meanwhile, a frightened little boy hides behind his father, crying in fear of the battle. Gathering his courage, the boy steps out from behind his father and points towards our heroes. He then shouts to his father, who turns around, confused, not understanding what's happening. Then the boy announces that there's someone unconscious in the bushes, surprising everyone there. Seeing the men, Ellen says he recognizes them, remembering them from the day before. The crowd realizes they are the missing men, questioning if the girl didn't actually kill them. On the ground, one of the knights begins to wake up slowly, still very dazed from the blow he took. Having recovered, he shouts to everyone that it was Lever who attacked and hid them there, and he reveals the plan was to use their bodies as evidence to capture the girl. Shocked by the revelation, the leader of the crowd doesn't understand what all of this really means. Realizing his plan has failed, Lever just turns his head away, finding the whole situation very annoying. Turning to Jean, he taunts her, saying she took part in under her father's orders. Unshaken, the girl just stares at him with determination, ready for the coming fight. Annoyed, Lever says she is disqualified as a warrior and is making his mission much more complicated. Then he prepares for a new attack, releasing a poisonous mist to end the fight. Unleashing his power, Lever prepares to use his most powerful technique to end the fight. He then unleashes his venomous insect mist, which rapidly advances toward Jean and Ellen. Terrified, the knights and the crowd scream in desperation, starting to run from the poison. In a swift move, Jean pulls Ellen back, yelling at him to avoid the smoke at all costs. But one of the knights is too slow and gets caught by the edge of the approaching mist. Soon after, he starts coughing violently, feeling the poison take effect in his body. At that moment, several villagers collapse, while others shout warnings about the spreading poison gas. Desperate, they beg the warrior to calm down, as the villagers are also being hit by the technique. Despite their pleas, Lever just watches the chaos in silence, showing not a shred of remorse. Flashing back, a young Lever lies on the ground, completely soaked by a heavy night rain. Just then, the armored boot of a man stomps down right next to his head. Looking up, he sees Dande Grafon staring down at him with an expression of utter contempt and disgust. Dande then humiliates him, saying he looks like an insect that has just been completely stomped on. Filled with hatred, young Lever just glares back, unable to say a single word, and Dandy finishes by saying that protecting one's convictions is something both right and wrong. Back then, Dande says that weak and fractured convictions are better off just disappearing from the map. He believes that unprincipled humans who can't protect a conviction are worse than insects. He concludes his advice by telling the boy to never forget the heart and eyes he once had. Back in the present, the villagers run in desperation, trying to escape the advancing poison mist. One of them helps the others flee, begging for help amid the chaos. Watching the scene, Jean prepares to act, covering her face with her cloak for protection. Through the smoke, Lever says that everyone there is trash, worse than useless insects. He then starts thinking of a way to solve the problem of the villagers' trust in her. With a sadistic smile, he says that as a warrior, only one solution comes to his mind now. He reveals that he's going to kill them all, eliminating the witnesses to maintain his dignity and complete the mission. Hearing the threat, Jean covers her mouth, shocked by the knight's cruelty. But suddenly Ellen charges forward at high speed, running directly into danger without fear. Caught by surprise, Lever's eyes widen as he notices the sudden approach. Ellen appears out of nowhere, landing a powerful blow right in the completely surprised knight's face. As he's hit, Lever asks if he isn't afraid of dying from the poison gas surrounding him. Feeling the poison, Ellen coughs hard, but continues to grip his hammer with firmness and determination. Remembering the past, he relives the day a giant monster attacked his hometown. After the attack, he recalls seeing all his friends lying lifeless on the ground. Isolated from everyone, he remembers being left completely alone after the tragedy was over. Back in the present, seeing the innocent suffer awakens all his fury against the knight. He then screams with hatred, saying he could never forgive an atrocity like this against innocent people. Lying on the ground, Lever looks up at him with a smile, admitting that he's a pretty decent warrior. On the battlefield, the two prepare for a combined attack against the enemy right there. Jean yells that she has strengthened their poison resistance, allowing them to fight for 5 more minutes. Hearing the warning, Ellen shouts his thanks to Jean and continues his attack with everything he has. From a distance, Lever watches the pair prepare for their final assault on his position. Meanwhile, a villager helps the fallen knight, asking if he's okay after being poisoned. Confused, the villager points out that the girl injured him, urging him him to get medical treatment quickly. Questioning everything, the knight wonders if the so-called witch just saved his life. Without hesitation, Ellen rushes forward again and blocks a direct blow from the knight with his hammer. Using his hammer, Ellen powerfully defends against the knight's strike, gritting his teeth from the impact. He then spins his body for a quick counterattack, but his opponent dodges it easily. Frustrated, he realizes he can't land a hit, as the skill gap between them is too wide. But suddenly, he gets a risky idea when he notices an opening in the knight's stance. He yells Jean's name, getting the girl's attention for his new plan. Running to her, he whispers the strategy in her ear, while Lever just watches the scene, confused. Startled, she says the plan is dangerous, but agrees to trust him as he charges forward. Seeing the advance, Lever asks if the method he came up with is just a simple frontal assault. With a smirk, he says that's no different from taking his own life. With a swift move, he lunges forward to strike the boy running toward him. Believing he has hit a vital spot, he smiles and says the fight is finally over for the boy. Suddenly, he feels an energy strike him and turns, surprised by what's happening. Jean hits him with her healing blade as Ellen leaps over for an attack. Being struck by the healing blade, he feels a completely unexpected sensation course through his strong body. Right after her attack, Ellen comes down with everything he has, ready to strike with his hammer. Recalling the plan, Ellen announces he'll charge forward without worrying about being hit by his enemy. Shouting that his opponent won't be able to dodge, he brings his hammer down for the decisive final attack. Seeing the charge, Lever quickly spins his body to try and evade the approaching blow. The hammer smashes into the ground with force, kicking up a huge, dense cloud of dust. After the impact, the shockwave spreads, raising even more dust across the battlefield. As the dust settles, the knight's body begins to dissolve into dark smoke. Afterward, Ellen rests his hammer on the ground, ending the tough battle once and for all. With a victorious smile, he makes a sign with his fingers, celebrating the success of the risky operation. Turning to leave, Jean stares at him, confused, not understanding the little boy's celebration. She grabs him tightly, angrily asking what success he's talking about at that specific moment. She yells that the plan was dangerous, telling him never to pull a crazy stunt like that again. Watching from afar, Darian is shocked by the scene, saying that all of this is simply impossible. Analyzing the fight, he realizes Jean's ability also temporarily increases strength and speed. And even with the boost, he's impressed by the power they demonstrated in the incredible final combined blow. But suddenly a boot steps on the ground, showing that the knight has not been fully defeated. Feeling the presence, Jean turns in shock, realizing the enemy is still standing. Emerging from the smoke, the knight's body materializes, revealing his incredible resistance to the powerful blow. With wide eyes, she can't believe he managed to get up after that powerful combined attack. Then she understands that this is the true power of a great warrior who serves the kingdom. Analyzing the situation, Lever thinks that things have become very bad and complicated for him. He recognizes the boy has formidable power, despite his skills still being at a beginner's level. Thinking about it, he admits it would be difficult to capture him without fighting seriously, even wanting to show him to his lord. Making a decision, he readies his arm for a new move, completely changing his strategy. He then announces that he'll have to cut off one of the boy's arms to finally take him. Hearing the threat, Jean is terrified by the knight's coldness, fearing what might happen. Retreating slightly, the two remain on high alert, preparing for the enemy's next move. With a sweaty face, the girl cries as she realizes they don't have much of a chance against him. Turning to the side, she tells Ellen she can only use her healing blade one more time. She explains that her stamina is the condition for using the ability and that she's already at her limit. She then proposes to surrender, saying that way he and the villagers will finally be completely safe. Outraged, Ellen shouts Jean's name, completely disagreeing with her decision to surrender to the knight. He then says she's not the only one who feels pain for the suffering of others around her. Hearing that, the girl just stares at him in silence, surprised by the little boy's unexpected response. Remembering the past, he says that nobody likes to see the people they love suffering nearby. He warns that those who consider her precious will also suffer greatly from her decision to surrender. He finishes by saying that Darian will be deeply hurt to see her suffering so sadly. In the distance, Darian watches everything with a serious expression, calling the girl's name, worried about her. Losing his patience, Lever takes a step forward, preparing to end the fight for good. With a burst of speed, he lunges toward the two for a surprise attack. Seeing his approach, Jean screams in desperation, warning everyone that the enemy is coming with everything he's got. She then turns and yells for Ellen to run, warning that his attack is dangerous. With her eyes wide, she stares at the scene in pure terror, fearing the worst. But in a swift motion, Ellen pushes her aside, placing himself in front of the knight's attack. Desperate, she screams, "No!" warning that he'll be badly hurt by the enemy's blow. Ignoring the warning, he braces for the hit, facing the knight with pure determination. Confident, Lever says that his speed and range are entirely in his favor right now. He then advances with his blade, preparing to use his poison technique once more. Shouting that his attack will land first, he vows to cut off the boy's right arm. With a determined look, the knight continues to charge at high speed to deliver the finishing blow. But suddenly his body stops in midair as small pieces of rock float around him. Just then, the little boy from the crowd jumps on his back, grabbing him tightly to disrupt his movement. With his body off balance, Lever complains that the brat managed to ruin the balance of his main attack. Seizing the opening, Ellen appears from behind, preparing to strike the knight while he's distracted. Gripping his hammer, he remembers all the evil things the knight had done up to that point. He recalls the Lever forced Jean to perform against her own will in the past. He also remembers him tormenting a kind old man in front of the entire crowd. And finally, he remembers his attempt to kill innocent people without any mercy for his plan. With an enraged face, he screams that he will never be able to forgive the knight for all his atrocities. He then smashes his hammer with all his might into the knight's back, who is unable to defend himself. As he falls, Lever remembers Dande saying that protecting one's convictions is something both right and wrong. Remembering the past, he recalls Dandy saying that weak and fractured convictions should simply disappear from the map. Dande believed that unprincipled humans were even worse than mere disgusting insects on the ground. With his pure heart, Ellen activates the full power of his blade of purity for the strike. Receiving the attack, Lever glares at him with a look of pure hatred, remembering his master's words. He then yells in anger, saying that those things worse than insects are complete trash. Using his heavenly innocence, Ellen hits him with a devastating blow, unleashing all his power. With the impact, the knight's face contorts as he takes the direct hit to his back. Continuing the motion, Ellen pushes him with more force, putting all his weight into the single attack. The force of the blow throws the little boy holding onto him far away, sending him flying through the air. In that instant, a massive explosion of energy occurs, releasing a flash of light that engulfs everything around it. The energy then slams violently into the ground, opening a crater and kicking up a large amount of dust. In the end, the explosion leaves only a trail of smoke, covering the entire battlefield. Thrown backward, the knight's body falls to the ground, completely defeated by the finishing blow. On the ground, his body begins to slowly dissolve into a dark, dense smoke. Watching the result, Jean stands in silence, completely surprised by what she just witnessed. In the distance, a knight from the crowd recognizes him, saying he is truly a real warrior. Holding his hammer, Ellen stands firm, staring at the spot where the enemy finally fell defeated. From afar, the crowd cheers in celebration, shouting that he has finally defeated the mighty knight. In the center of the crater, the knight's body finishes dissipating, vanishing completely. Still processing everything, Jean looks at him with admiration, saying that he truly achieved a great victory. Suddenly, Ellen collapses to the ground in exhaustion, surprising Jean with the completely unexpected scene. Worried, she runs towards him, shouting his name to see if he is really okay. Lying on the ground, he explains that during the attack, he managed to land a grazing counterattack on the opponent. Remembering the fight, the scene shows the exact moment he was hit by the blow. Showing his arm, he reveals that the impact of the enemy's blow also hit him lightly. Then he says that he was very nearly hit full-on by the knight's powerful attack. Hearing his account, Jean continues to stare at him with an expression of pure worry for his condition. Analyzing the crater, she is impressed by the force of his counterattack in that brief moment of the fight. With a sigh, she just lowers her head, relieved that he wasn't seriously injured. Then she says she's glad he isn't hurt, but that he needs treatment. But suddenly, a boot appears out of nowhere and smashes the ground right in front of them. As they feel the tremor, they both look up, completely surprised by the new presence. Emerging from the smoke, Lever's figure appears again, showing he has not yet been defeated. Fully recovered, he faces them with a sadistic smile, ready for the next round of the fight. Unable to believe it, Ellen stares at him in pure terror, realizing the situation has gotten even worse. In the distance, Darien says it's only natural they can't defeat the knight so easily, for he is an elite warrior recognized by the kingdom, even in a 2-on-1 fight. With a smile, Lever says there's an insurmountable wall between their power levels. Then he asks if the boy thinks he's going to lose to a fake warrior like him. Sitting next to Ellen, Jean calls his name, trying to give him some confidence. She then says the choice is his, as he was the one who managed to defeat the knight before. With a determined look, she asks if he can trust her from this moment on. With her hands on the ground, she prepares to use her ability once more in the fight. Staring at her in silence, the boy just watches her, waiting for her next move. Then with a smile, he answers yes, saying he got her message. Soon after, Jean stands up and walks towards Lever, preparing for battle. With a sadistic smile, he asks what she thinks she can do with such a weak soul blade, and he taunts her, saying she's a fraud who abandoned all her most important convictions. Ignoring the taunt, the girl just closes her eyes and begins to concentrate on her ability. All around, the knights and the crowd watch the scene, curious about what will happen. Surprised, Ellen just watches, feeling the energy emanating from his companion's body. Turning around, Lever looks at her, confused, not understanding what she is doing at that very moment. With a look of contempt, he asks what she thinks she's doing with that ability of hers. Soon after, the girl places her hand on the knight's chest, releasing her healing energy into him. His body is then enveloped by the ability, with the energy spreading through all his wounds. Touching his chest, she warns that his physical injuries are severe and that he will get hurt. With her hand on her sword, she says he will probably regret his current actions. But with a determined look, she states that she can't leave injured people behind. Remembering the past, she recalls Darien, who taught her the importance of always helping everyone. Then she says that healing the wounded, no matter who they are, is her true and unshakable conviction. Hearing that, Lever falls silent, finding the girl's attitude foolish and completely meaningless. Then he warns that because of an act of sympathy, everyone there could end up dead. And he says her morality is just pathetic and meaningless self-consolation. With a look of contempt, he warns that she has destroyed the boy's hope of defeating him. Hearing the knight, Ellen remains silent, processing the harsh and cruel truth in his words. Then Lever tells him to face reality and just despair at the imminent defeat. With a cold look, he prepares to continue the fight, showing them no mercy. From a distance, he watches the girl using her healing ability to treat the wounded in the battle. Recovered, Lever asks how she can still use the healing blade even though she is so exhausted. Remembering their conversation, he recalls her saying she could only use the ability one more time, because her stamina had already reached its maximum limit after so many consecutive uses in the fight. Then she reveals that the condition to use the blade is her stamina, which is at its limit. But when her stamina runs out, she can use her own life force as a last resort. With a determined look, she announces she can use her own life to keep using her ability. With this, she says that with this method, she can save everyone who is injured there, because for her, this is the true responsibility for all her actions up to that moment. Shocked, he asks if she is really planning to die to save everyone there. With a smile, she says that if she dies, his mission will fail and he will have to go back. Hearing her answer, Lever just stares at her in silence, not knowing how to react. With a smile, Lever says that was a good hit he took from the girl. Then he calls his soldiers and orders them all to prepare to finally go home. With a sadistic smile, he says that the mission was a complete and utter failure for them. As he leaves, he declares that this was their defeat, admitting he lost the battle. Watching the scene, Darien just smiles, proud of his dear pupil's attitude and strength. Sitting on the ground, Ellen says she was incredible, totally impressed by the strength of her conviction. But suddenly, Jean faints and falls to the ground, surprising everyone with her unexpected collapse. Worried, Darien rushes to her, asking if she's okay and what just happened. With a smile, she says she's fine, as she just relaxed after all the tension, and adds that she's happy everyone is finally safe from the danger that surrounded them. Holding her hand, Darien looks at her with a caring gaze, proud of her great development. With a slight smile, he praises her, saying she has truly become much stronger. Soon after, she faints again in his arms, collapsing from exhaustion after the difficult battle. Indignant, a resident asks if they are really going to let that witch just walk away, and continues, saying she is an evil witch who attacks innocent citizens without any mercy. Believing the rumor, a knight readies himself, his weapon already drawn for the attack. With a hateful look, he says they should get rid of her once and for all. Indignant, Darien shouts that this is absurd, as they saw the actions of the real culprit. With a smile, the knight prepares, completely ignoring the old man's warning and everyone else's. He thinks that if he captures her, the reward from the Order of Knights will be all his, and that even if the story about the witch is a rumor, it's none of his business. Then he charges forward, shouting that this is the path of justice and telling everyone to get out of the way. But suddenly, Ellen and Jean are pulled back, out of the path of the oncoming attack. At that moment, small blue fragments float in the air, signaling the presence of someone approaching. Soon after, the villagers appear in front of them, blocking the path of the knight and his group. Surprised, he asks if the villagers are trying to interfere with his current mission. With a look of relief, the leader of the crowd just stares at him in silence, not responding. Then he says that this matter is a problem that belongs exclusively to their village, and that this is a problem they need to solve themselves, without anyone else's interference. Hearing the answer, the knight just glares at him, irritated, not knowing how to react to the whole situation. At that moment, the recovered knight intervenes, telling the other to stop his madness. With a serious look, he says it seems they all believed the wrong rumors about her. Standing with the group, he faces the crowd, admitting the mistake they all made. Sitting on the ground, Ellen just lets out a sigh of relief, happy with the outcome of the situation. Suddenly, a voice calls him, and he turns to see the crowd leader approaching. With a smile, the man says he will buy him expensive gloves again as a thank you for everything. Hearing the promise, the boy looks at him, surprised, not knowing how to react to the gesture of gratitude. But soon after, he breaks into a smile, happy to have helped everyone and solved the problem. In the distance, a tall tower stands out on the horizon, with a speech bubble saying, "Incredible." In the forest, the soldiers question Lever's decision, asking if he is really going back now. He confirms, but they insist, saying that their lord's order was very clear to everyone. Remembering the past, he recalls the order to capture Jean, even if he had to use force, because Dandy said that if she resisted, he could kill her and bring her body back. In silence, Lever recalls Dandy's words about protecting one's convictions being both right and wrong. With a smirk, he says that it's just that she has become worthy of observation. Then he finishes, saying that she has become worthy of being watched for a little while longer. Curious about the power, Ellen asks what rules a Soul Blade user must absolutely follow. Darien confirms that there are indeed rules, and they vary greatly depending on the specific type of each blade. Seeing the boy's confused expression, Darien laughs before beginning his important explanation. Raising his index finger, he prepares to reveal the most basic and fundamental rule of all. He then reveals that the foundation of everything is to never act against a warrior's own convictions. Processing the new information, the boy continues to stare at his master, waiting for more of an explanation. In the middle of their talk, Ellen asks what happens when a warrior breaks this fundamental rule. Darien then explains that their convictions become corrupted and, in the end, harm the user themselves. He adds that the type of corruption changes greatly depending on the heart of that specific soul blade. For this reason, users have no choice but to desperately protect their own unique convictions. Recalling one case, he describes how a man was completely consumed by shadows after betraying his own ideals. Showing another example, he reveals that using a power other than hatred caused another man's blade to disappear. Then, with his hands clenched, the warrior feels his power vanish completely as he despairs in the situation. Back in the classroom, Darien finishes by saying that righteous convictions generate even greater power. He then asks if Ellen's blade of purity doesn't work on good people, and the boy confirms it. Warning him of the danger, Darien says that if his conviction is broken, the corruption will advance very quickly. But Ellen replies that his blade can't attack good people, so for him, that's not a problem. Hearing the boy's response, Darien pauses and falls silent for a moment, thinking. Noticing the strange reaction, Ellen is confused, not understanding the reason for his master's hesitation. Right after, Darien changes the subject, saying that if he maintains his convictions, then there really won't be a problem. Turning his face away, he lets out a sigh of relief, having almost said something he shouldn't have. Thinking to himself, he admits that such worries are unnecessary for a child like him at the moment. Changing scenes, Ellen looks at his new glove and says he can't see the difference from the old one. A shopkeeper explains that the leather is high quality, prompting the boy to ask what that changes. The man then says that because it's more durable, the resale price can be much higher. Yawning, Ellen thanks him and says he'll put them to good use. The shopkeeper asks why. Ellen explains that he had lessons with Grandpa Darien until very late the previous night. With a focused gaze, he reveals he's doing all this because he wants to become a strong warrior. Recalling the fight, he says that Gujungro was powerful and that without Jean, he wouldn't have been able to protect anyone. Because of this memory, he clenches his fist tightly, renewing his determination to achieve his goal. With his fist raised, Ellen declares he will become even stronger to protect everyone important to him. Hearing the boy's determination, the shopkeeper smiles, proud of the attitude he showed. But Ellen surprises him by asking why the request was made specifically to him, leaving the man shocked. Continuing, he says the rumors about Jean didn't seem to be a major concern for everyone. With nothing to say, the shopkeeper simply turns his face away and remains silent for a moment. Recalling the past, he explains that the initial plan was just to verify the truth of the rumors. Paying close attention, Ellen keeps looking at the shopkeeper, waiting for him to continue his long story. He then reveals that the girl had lived in the village for a long time, but always kept herself well hidden. Pointing to the city, he says that place is the port town of Regis, an important location. Just listening in silence, the boy absorbs every word spoken by the man in front of him. Because of this, he explains, many false rumors end up arriving and spreading easily through the village. With a clenched fist, he states that he doesn't believe anyone is born a true warrior. Remembering his duty, he says that an adult's responsibility is to show everyone the right path. He adds that even if they can't be a good influence, they can't be a bad one either. Hearing all this, Ellen finally seems to understand the weight of the responsibility that now rests on his shoulders. With pride, the shopkeeper says that their village is a place where countless aspiring warriors always pass through. He then states that guiding the youth is the greatest responsibility and the pride of the people of that place. Understanding the importance of that mission, Ellen breaks into a wide smile while leaning on the wooden counter. At that very moment, the sails of a huge ship anchored in the port begin to unfurl, preparing to depart. Startled by the noise, Ellen flinches as the shopkeeper announces that the ship is already leaving. The man then looks to the side, noticing someone approaching them on the pier. He announces that Ellen's companions are arriving, making the boy look over the barrel. Upon seeing who was approaching, the boy's face lights up with surprise and happiness. Carrying her luggage, Jean walks toward the ship, ready to begin her new journey. But before she leaves, a little boy from the village thanks her for everything she did for him. In a gesture of affection, she places her hand on the boy's head, and he smiles with joy. After the quick farewell, Jean continues on her way to the ship, moving forward with determination. Changing scenes, Darian is asked if he was really serious about the decision he made. With a very serious expression, he confirms that yes, he was completely certain about his risky decision. Next, Jean states with a smile that she will also follow Ellen, no matter what happens. Declaring with a smile, Jean announces that she will also take the exam to become an official warrior. Hearing her decision, Darian seems to hesitate, but the girl tries to reason with him about her choice. Turning her face, she begins to explain the real reason behind her sudden and unexpected decision. Recalling her past, she says she needs to find a way to make up for all the mistakes she has made. Darian then warns that Ellen's soul blade is strong, but it could become dangerous depending on his heart. Because she was helped, she reveals that she wants to guide the boy on the right path to avoid future problems, just as Darian had done for her when they first met on her lonely journey. Hearing her words, Darian falls silent for a moment, just processing her great determination. He then understands that she hopes the boy won't go through the same thing she did. With a slight smile, he finally agrees with her decision, saying that was enough. He then sits down and comments that deep down, she has always been that kind of gentle child. Giving his final approval, he says that if this is her will, he won't oppose it. Noticing his concern, the girl asks him not to worry about what's to come. With a determined smile, she promises that this time, she won't run away from her problems again. Perceiving the change in her, he is surprised, as it's the first time he's seen her act this way. Watching the two depart, Darian thinks that it's the first time he's ever seen her smile like that. Just then, the ship sounds its horn, announcing that the long-awaited journey is finally beginning. Observing from the pier, he says that they can run away anytime if things get too difficult. Soon after, the enormous ship begins to move slowly away from the port, sailing out to sea. Already on board, Jean and Ellen lean against the railing, super excited about the start of their journey. With a smile on his face, the boy asks what their final destination is. Smiling back, Jean confirms she knows exactly where they're going for their next challenge. As they sail, she reveals their destination is the place all warriors in the kingdom pass through. Then, she confirms that their grand journey is headed for the capital, called Big Field. Cutting to a castle, an imposing figure in armor observes the city from his room's window. Just then, a hooded man approaches and reports that all preparations for the plan are complete. Upon hearing the report, the man with long white hair turns without saying a single word. He then begins to walk silently out of the room, heading somewhere else. Descending a long staircase, the imposing figure continues down the dark corridor of the grand castle. At the end of his path, a heavy ancient dungeon door is shown in the underground. Stopping in front of a glowing door, the white-haired man prepares for what is to come. With a focused gaze, he whispers to himself that there isn't much time left for the plan. He then extends his hand and touches the surface of the barrier, feeling the energy coming from it. Within the light, he can feel the presence of a man consumed by a deep and overwhelming hatred. Beyond that feeling, he also senses that something else was sealed along with that great power. Just then, he sees a sinister sword, the true source of all the hatred stored there. Changing scenes, the story takes us to a bustling tavern in the capital, known as Big Field. Inside, several patrons are drinking and talking peacefully, unaware of the danger that is about to arrive. Suddenly, the door is kicked open, and a group of bandits storms the establishment, startling everyone. At the front, their leader, Hector, steps onto a table and shouts for a drink. As the group enters, the other patrons recognize him as a dangerous criminal with a bounty on his head. Frightened, the bar owner informs them that while she has drinks, she's out of healing herbs. She then points her finger at a specific person sitting quietly in the corner of the tavern. She explains to the bandits that this mysterious man bought her entire stock. Hearing the conversation, the man simply turns his head and stares at the menacing group. Stepping closer, Hector says they need the herbs and that their price isn't worth a life. Unfazed, the mysterious man slowly takes his feet off the table. He then stands up and comes face to face with the bandit, eagerly awaiting his next move. With a sadistic smile, one of the henchmen tells him to hand over the herbs without a fight to avoid trouble. Surprising everyone, the man calmly begins to explain the use of each of his medicinal items. Right after, he kneels and starts treating one of the henchman's wounds, leaving Hector stunned. Completely bewildered, Hector just stares at the mysterious man, not understanding what just happened. Still in disbelief, he asks if the man is really going to hand over all his healing items that easily. Pretending to be scared, the man says he gets nervous and will give them everything if they spare his life. Hearing the pathetic response, Hector is convinced the man before him is a coward. At this, his henchmen start to mock him, while the man says that getting hurt is scary to him. Seizing the opportunity, one of the thugs suggests they also rob the safe of the rundown tavern. Running toward the counter, the henchman excitedly asks how much money must be stored in there. But in that same instant, the mysterious man lunges forward and lands a blow that sends the thug flying. Completely shocked by the scene, Hector yells and asks if he's looking for a big fight. Seeing his companion on the floor, the other henchman is completely paralyzed, showing no apparent reaction. Then, Corazzo summons his soul blade, surprising the bandits who didn't expect that from him. He then reveals that even though he's a coward, he is still an aspiring warrior and will not run away. In a complete change of scenery, Ellen looks up, totally impressed by everything he sees around him. Arriving in the capital city of Big Field, he runs through the streets, shouting about how tall the buildings are. Just then, a suspicious man approaches and calls him a complete country bumpkin, which irritates Ellen. Explaining what he's selling, the man describes a cold dessert made of milk and frozen cream. Hearing the description, Ellen looks to the side with an expression of total suspicion and curiosity. But upon closer inspection, he quickly changes his mind, thinking the dessert looks delicious. He then asks for two, but Jean scolds him, saying he just ate. She explains that sweets with too much sugar cause diseases, but he doesn't understand her explanation. The vendor then says he uses substitutes, so there's no need to worry, and it's popular among people on diets. Still suspicious, Jean continues to stare at the vendor with an unfriendly expression, analyzing the whole situation. A moment later, she takes the ice cream and takes a big bite, ignoring all possible risks. Walking down the street, Ellen eats happily and comments that the capital has many amazing things to try. With the sweet treat in hand, he says that now he can finally become a warrior. Meanwhile, Jean continues to eat her ice cream in silence as she walks calmly beside the boy. Taking advantage of the moment, she asks him why he really wants to become a warrior so badly. She then comments that, on second thought, she had never asked him that question before. Going back in time, he begins to remember when the demon race brutally attacked his village. On that tragic day, he reveals he was the only one who managed to escape and survive the attack. Remembering the tragedy, he watches the flames with a terrified look, completely paralyzed by fear. At that moment, he could only watch the destruction, unable to do anything to help the people. Being saved, he reveals that it was a warrior named Hate who rescued him from the demons. Because of that, he decided to become a warrior who saves and protects all precious people. Hearing the story, Jean turns her face and gives her young companion a slight smile. As they walk together, the two continue to talk about the past and the future of their journeys. But suddenly she stops and asks, confused, why he mentioned the name Hate. Shouting in alarm, she questions the reason, since he is one of the king's 10 swords. Not understanding her reaction, Ellen asks what the king's 10 swords she mentioned are. She explains that they are warriors with independent political and military power granted by the king himself. Pointing a finger, she states that they are the most incredible warriors in the entire kingdom. Furthermore, she reveals that Gujongro was an executive of an order connected to this group. As he processes the information, Ellen falls silent and starts to sweat, shocked by the revelation. Looking at the ground, he just says that, to him, Hate was simply an incredible person. At that, his eyes widen as he realizes the truth behind the warrior who saved him. Shouting in surprise, Ellen asks if Jean's father is also one of the king's 10 swords, but she deflects, saying she heard Hate never returned from his last mission and they might not find him. Hearing the news, the boy becomes worried about the whereabouts of the man who once saved him. Recalling the past, he shows that he used his soul blade to defend himself from a fatal blow. He then reveals that when he regained consciousness, Hate had simply vanished without a trace. With a clenched fist, he renews his determination, remembering the day it all happened in his village. In his memory, he recalls the brutal actions he saw the warrior Hate commit against their enemies. Shouting with conviction, he vows that he will save everyone to prove that Hate was completely wrong. Hearing his promise, Jean stares at him in silence for a moment, simply observing his strong determination. Then she reminds him that to do that, he first needs to pass the difficult warrior exam. Stopping in her tracks, she stomps her foot on the ground and announces that they have finally arrived at their destination. At the location, a crowd of warriors of all kinds was already gathering in the capital's square. Seeing all the competitors, Ellen gulps, becoming very nervous about the number of strong people there. Analyzing the crowd, he notices that all the warriors in that place seem to be very experienced in combat. They were all warrior candidates, gathered there in the square for the start of the exam of their lives. Then, a voice comes out of nowhere to wish a good day to all the aspirants present. Shortly after, a girl appears and announces that she will be the supervisor in charge of this important year's exam. With a confident smile, she introduces herself to everyone as Rule Regula, the warrior of rules. Noticing she has their attention, she informs the crowd that she will finally begin her long explanation. She reveals that the exam has 3 stages and that there is no compensation for any kind of accident. Hearing the warning, all the candidates gulp, understanding the seriousness of the challenge ahead. With a serious look, she assumes that everyone there agrees to the dangerous rules that have been imposed. Snapping her fingers, she says that her rule-based ability manifests when the majority agrees with them. A giant sword then materializes in the sky, proving her ability has been successfully activated. Pointing downward, she prepares to use the power she gained from everyone's consent. In that same instant, the weapon falls from the sky and hits the ground, creating a massive impact. After the dust settles, the supervisor reveals the rule for the exam that has just begun. She then announces that the person who can pull that sword from the ground will pass the first stage. Confused, the warriors wonder if this is just a simple test of raw physical strength. Underestimating the challenge, a muscular man approaches and says he'll be the first to pass. With a watchful eye, Supervisor Regola just observes the candidate approaching the great embedded sword. Grasping the weapon's hilt with both hands, he prepares to use all of his strength. Then, he starts pulling the sword with all his might, baring his teeth. But even with all his effort, he can't move the blade even a single inch. Shocked by the result, he complains that not even his house-uprooting strength was enough. At this, Regula reveals that when someone touches the sword, their qualifications enter her mind for analysis. She then explains that, at the moment of contact, she is able to judge the person standing there. With a smile, she finishes by saying she will judge whether or not he is suitable to be a warrior. After his failure, she tells the completely exhausted man that he can try again next year. Turning to the crowd, she announces that if they are worthy, they will be able to pull the sword out easily. Soon after, the crowd of warriors begins to surge forward, pushing Ellen and Jean in the process. Worried about the commotion, Ellen asks Jean what they should do in this situation. She replies that the best thing to do is to just observe the situation calmly first. Seeing another candidate fail, the people comment on a man who always shows up for the annual exams. Panting and sweating profusely, the mysterious man prepares to try his luck once more. Being called a repeater, Corazzo kneels and grips the sword with all his available strength. With sweat dripping from his face, he continues to pant as he tries to pull the blade from the ground. Analyzing the scene, the supervisor judges him as a useless candidate with a small and petty heart. The entire scene takes place in the central square, right in front of the venue for the important warrior exams. Getting up in frustration, he turns to the crowd, loudly questioning the reason for his harsh failure. Just then, a young woman with blonde hair stares at him from a distance with a mocking smile, watching the whole situation unfold. Noticing her gaze, he turns towards her, hearing the woman ask if he possesses a soul blade. In front of everyone, she questions him, saying that having such a powerful weapon should have guaranteed his easy passing of the exam. Annoyed by the taunt, he yells back, "Yes," and asks what the problem is. With a smirk, she holds up an apple and challenges him, telling him to try and cut the fruit with his blade. Right after, the woman tosses the small fruit into the air, starting the test in front of everyone. Accepting the challenge, the man sprints towards the apple as it falls from the sky. With a swift and precise movement, he unleashes a powerful strike towards the small target floating in the air. Watching the scene, young Ellen and Jean Graffon observe from the crowd with looks of utter surprise. In that same instant, the apple is completely disintegrated by the impact, exploding into tiny pieces in mid-air. But at the end of the move, the warrior drops to his knees again, completely exhausted and now without his sword. Landing on the ground, the apple rolls away intact while he remains on his knees, defeated by the simple test. Watching it all, young Ellen is completely shocked, not understanding what just happened in front of him. Then, the examiner reveals her cold gaze, beginning to explain the reason behind the candidate's humiliating failure. She points out that his weapon is actually a sword without a blade, just a hilt. She then accuses him of having a coward's heart, which is reflected in his non-existent blade. Right after, she declares that his sword is the reason for his failure, finally calling him by his name, Corazzo Mernandi. She continues the humiliation, saying his fearful heart is not fit for a warrior. Hearing the harsh words, little Ellen reflects on what it truly means to have a warrior's heart. Ignoring the commotion, the examiner simply asks for the next candidate to present themselves. Seeing this, the other candidates begin to protest, finding her decision completely absurd and baseless. Shouting about the injustice, the people question if there's corruption in the selection process. Outraged by the situation, some men step forward, demanding she conduct a fairer and more impartial evaluation. In the midst of the confusion, a giant, muscular man steps forward, drawing everyone's attention. He advances towards her, saying he can't accept this because a warrior is a true hero. Completely furious, he yells at the woman, questioning how a girl like her dares to judge him that way. With a simple snap of her fingers, the examiner launches a counterattack against the man who dared to challenge her. In that same instant, the giant man is thrown high into the air with absurd force, shocking everyone. As he flies, the woman explains that violence between candidates and examiners is strictly forbidden. She then reveals that the impact, which created a crater in the ground, was the punishment for breaking the rules. Fallen and defeated, the man is surrounded by other candidates who now understand the seriousness of the rigorous evaluation. At that moment, a new warrior walks to the center, calling the fallen man pathetic and a failure. He questions the crowd, asking if they would also complain about a surprise attack on the battlefield. Holding his weapon tightly, he prepares to show everyone what it takes to pass. Then, he draws his sword and says that situations and environments are always changing. With a confident smile, he shouts that a warrior can only trust himself and his training. Right after, the examiner announces that he is the first to pass, congratulating him on his excellent warrior's heart. Seeing that many were still complaining, the woman decides to explain the true evaluation criteria for the exam. She reveals that candidates are judged on their wisdom, virtue, body, and most importantly, their heart. She then details that the passing score is 30 points, leaving all the candidates surprised. With a smile, she asks if they'd expect corruption from her, the very warrior of rules. Then, with everything settled, the examiner announces to the crowd that the exam can finally continue. Some time passes, and the large tower clock shows that several candidates have already completed their tests. Soon after, the examiner announces that the 17th person to pass is the young Jean Graffon. As she walks away, the crowd murmurs about her being from the famous Graffon family and the rumors surrounding them. Running towards her, a very excited young Ellen congratulates her on her great and well-deserved pass. With a smile, Jean tells Ellen not to worry, assuring him that he will also pass the test. Hearing this, the boy is filled with determination and replies that yes, he will do his best. And so, a line of those who passed begins to form in the square, all waiting for the next stages of the exam. Showing his nervousness, a candidate in line sees a hooded figure mysteriously walk past everyone. Continuing on its way, the figure proceeds alone down a more distant hallway, away from the other candidates and the crowd. Just then, the hooded person stops upon hearing someone approach and ask if they really came. Gathered in an alley, the group comments that the exam was dangerous, but they handled everything perfectly. Then, the hooded person says that now, they can finally breathe a little easier with the result. Turning around, they see a pile of bodies on the ground, all completely bloodied and lifeless. He then reveals that those are the real successful candidates, and that he simply forged all his documents. Discussing the plan, one of them says that if they get caught, they must carry out the mission immediately without hesitation. Giving orders, he tells them to get rid of the bodies while mentioning that the boss is busy right now. Then, one of the men asks the leader if he is ready to finally begin the grand plan. In response, he reveals his demonic hand, saying he will do anything for the mission he was given. Changing scenes, the tower clock shows the exam is still ongoing, with time passing quickly. Upon hearing his name called, a candidate steps forward. indicating the long line has finally moved. Soon after, little Ellen runs determinedly to the center of the arena to finally begin his test. Seeing this, the other candidates start to laugh, wondering if a child came to play warrior, but ignoring the laughter, he takes a firm stance, showing the look of a true, ready warrior. At that moment, he remembers when hate, despite his questionable actions, saved him from danger twice. Reflecting on this, the boy thinks that maybe his heart isn't fit for a true warrior either. But with a firm grip, he holds his sword with both hands, showing his great determination. Seeing the young boy's attitude, the examiner closes her eyes for a brief moment before starting the evaluation. Then, she opens her eyes, revealing an intense red color, ready to judge the boy's soul. With a resolute expression, young Ellen prepares to prove the worth of his warrior's heart. Shouting with all his might, he reveals that his heart desires to save everyone, no matter the cost. With all his conviction, he states that he has never for a second felt ashamed of that noble desire. Hearing the boy's words, the examiner is visibly surprised by the strong determination she has just witnessed. As she analyzes his soul, she senses the immense willpower that exists within that small boy. Then, a small white object is thrown to the ground, sliding across the stone floor right in front of him. Instantly, young Ellen cries out in complete shock, unable to believe what just happened. A moment later, he finds himself standing next to the examiner, finally one of the few who passed the difficult test. But suddenly he turns his head, noticing a large commotion starting on the other side of the square. Full of rage, a foot stomps hard on the ground, starting the fight that drew everyone's attention. Nearby, the failed warrior was still on the ground, lamenting that he had once again failed his goal. Lifting his gaze, he notices a group approaching, shouting that they have finally found him. They then rush towards him, accusing him of stealing recovery herbs and then running away. Crying with anger, one of the men calls him Hector while staring at him with a look of disappointment. As he flees, Corazzo yells that the herbs were bought with his own money, but the man doesn't believe him. Suddenly, the pursuer is hit by an extremely fast blow, sent flying far away by the impact. Turning back, Corazzo is completely confused, not understanding where the blow that saved him came from. His face a mask of shock, he loudly questions what is happening and why it occurred. Watching from a distance, little Ellen also looks up at the sky, wondering the same thing as the warrior. Suddenly, two winged figures appear in the sky, descending at high speed towards everyone. As it descends, the creature loudly questions the presence of demons right in the middle of the capital. He then reveals a menacing look, stating that all of this is part of his important mission. Looking at the sky, the crowd panics, questioning if those beings are really demons and enemies. With a serious look, the examiner reveals to everyone that they are spies from the Demon King's army. Analyzing the situation, she rules out an invasion, believing it's just a small group trying to get everyone's attention. Then the creature grabs a man, confirming her suspicion that it wants to cause a huge commotion there. Faced with the threat, the woman's hand begins to glow, preparing to fight. Holding her weapon, she says that although she doesn't know their purpose, they got what they really wanted. In that same instant, she lunges with incredible speed towards the still flying demon. Right after, she spins her body and prepares a powerful blow to strike the flying enemy head on. Watching from the ground, the first candidate to pass the test is completely surprised by her speed. Then, the woman's attack hits the demon with absurd force, creating a shockwave. Fallen among the rubble, she slowly gets up as the people ask if the warrior is okay. Remembering the rule, she realizes that violence against candidates is forbidden, and everyone there agreed to it. Looking at the sky, she understands that the demon was actually one of the registered candidates. At that moment, the creature seizes the opportunity and prepares a powerful energy blast to launch at the city. The attack causes a huge explosion that hits the buildings, making everyone run for their lives. Fallen on the ground, little Ellen struggles to get up amid all the city's chaos. As he looks ahead, his eyes widen in complete surprise at a totally unexpected scene unfolding. While everyone runs in desperation, he sees Corazzo advancing alone towards the great danger. With an expression of pure determination, the failed warrior grits his teeth and keeps running into battle. Observing the brave act, young Ellen recognizes the man who was humiliated and is now going to fight. But suddenly, the first approved candidate appears and intercepts the demon with his spear, defending the city. With a smile, he says he doesn't know the reason, but he's going to kill that filthy demon. The demon then faces him, questioning if he's just a mere warrior candidate trying to take him on. Right after, the creature warns that if he really wants to face it, he'll need a lot more power. Shouting for a warrior, it unleashes a massive blow that shatters the ground, sending him flying. After the attack, the demon is confused, feeling that the impact of the blow was strangely light. Before its eyes, what looked like a body dissolves into dust and pieces of cloth. Revealing his ability, a small cloth doll falls to to the ground, showing the body swap that was made. As it turns, the creature is faced with the image of the real warrior appearing right behind it. The demon then tries to swat the opponent away, sending him flying with the force. Impressed by the move, the creature turns, observing the opponent with new interest in the fight. Quickly, the demon flaps its wings and retreats, gaining distance to better analyze the current situation. Then, it launches an attack with several blades that descend at high speed towards the warrior. Showing no fear, the warrior plants himself on the ground, preparing his weapons to receive the powerful blow. In that same instant, the attack hits the ground, creating a huge explosion and kicking up dust. From a distance, the demon comments that the accuracy of the attack, called Celestial Martial Fall, was terrible against him, but suddenly the warrior appears behind it in the air, revealing he's holding several heavy chains. Caught by surprise, the demon's eyes widen, not understanding how he appeared there so quickly. Right after, the chains wrap around the demon, completely immobilizing it with the weight of several weapons. Pulling the chains hard, the warrior spins, preparing a massive attack. Then, the demon's body is pierced by several blades at once, coming from all directions. Observing the result, the warrior gives a slight smirk, satisfied with the success of his strategy. Despite being injured, the demon remains standing, saying it found his technique quite interesting. With a smile, the warrior praises it, saying it's tough, as expected of a monster. Meanwhile, panic grips the city, with civilians running to escape the fire and the demon. As chaos ensues, civilians run desperately through the streets, fleeing the flames that consume the city. In the midst of the panic, a little girl cries desperately, calling for her mother amid all the smoke. Just then, a flaming wooden beam starts to fall right towards the completely defenseless little child, but suddenly she is pulled away at the last second, narrowly escaping the imminent disaster. Seeing the scene, young Ellen points and shouts, shocked by what he's seeing. He warns that an invisible demon is kidnapping the girl, who is floating alone in the air for no reason. Right after, he becomes confused, realizing something isn't right, and asks everyone to wait. Then he sees that the man from before, Corazzo, has saved the girl and is now carrying her in his arms. Shifting to a more remote area, the city in the background remains a scene of pure destruction. Arriving at a safe place, Corazzo says it seems to be a well-protected evacuation area. At this, Ellen asks how he became invisible, and Corazzo explains it's his Soul Blade's ability. The boy then asks if he needed to be invisible to save the child, seemingly not understanding why. Embarrassed, he explains that everything was terrifying, pointing to the chaos and the flaming demon. Looking up at the now calmer sky, the immediate threat seems to have passed, bringing a brief moment of relief. He then reveals that his Soul Blade only has invisibility, as his combat power is very low. Sitting on the ground, Corazzo reveals he took the exam because of a promise, but now he's tired of it all. Listening intently to the story, Ellen stares at him in silence, processing the warrior's sad and harsh revelation. Trying to cheer him up, the boy says he saved the child, but Corazzo laments that the examiners don't see it that way. Suddenly, a desperate cry for help catches their attention, and they both turn towards the sound. Looking towards the square, they see that there are still civilians trapped, surrounded by danger and destruction. Amid all the smoke, the tower clock shows that time continues to pass during the battle. Among the rubble, the demon lifts the approved warrior by the neck, showing its total superiority in the fight. Hiding behind the debris, a man watches the scene in despair, seeing his son trapped near the danger. Crying in fear, the man points in the direction where his son is cornered. Seeing this, Ellen runs towards the danger, saying he must save the child at all costs. But he stops in surprise, seeing that Corazzo is already running ahead of him to save the little boy. Meanwhile, the demon tightens its grip on the warrior's neck, who chokes, unable to breathe from the blow. With its opponent defeated, the creature taunts him, saying he will die because of his great weakness. Then, the creature bares its sharp teeth, preparing to finally end its rival's life. With a focused gaze, it prepares for the final blow, determined to end this fight once and for all. Turning, the demon faces the child trapped in the rubble, choosing its next target. With eyes full of tears, the boy watches the creature approach, completely paralyzed with fear. The demon then says that for the mission to succeed, it would be better if there were some civilian casualties. But suddenly, it's hit by a strong blow to the head, which unbalances it for a moment. Confused, it turns to the side, trying to understand where the attack came from. Looking around the destroyed square, it can't see anyone nearby who could have attacked. Suddenly, it's hit again, questioning aloud who dares to interfere with its plans. Meanwhile, Jean and the warrior run to rescue the child, fleeing from the other demon chasing them. With a smile, the creature says that a little rat like him won't be able to escape its claws. Its focused gaze sweeps the area, desperately trying to find the source of the attacks that hit it, but its advance is stopped by an invisible force, making it choke from the impact of the block. As it turns, it recognizes the figure materializing in front of it, asking if it's him. Right after, Karazo appears, blocking the demon's attack, who calls him a coward for his actions. With a single blow, the creature throws him far away, making him fall hard on the stone ground. Then, it says that a coward's skills are pathetic, mocking the quality of the warrior candidates. Fallen on the ground, Karazo grits his teeth with an expression of pure pain and exhaustion from the tough battle. Ignoring him, the demon tells him to get out of the way, saying it will kill the insect first and then him. But suddenly, Karazo appears and strikes from behind, hitting the creature's head hard. Surprised by the attack, the demon falls silent for a moment, feeling the impact of the blow. At this, the crowd questions why he's advancing, saying that a weak coward like him should run. Recalling the rules, they say that soul blades come from emotions, proving his heart is pathetic. They continue, saying his action isn't heroic, but a reckless and meaningless death. With a swift move, the demon lunges forward, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris with its speed. Throwing Karazo against the rubble, the creature yells at him to act like a coward and stay back. Right after, the demon turns its back and starts to walk away, believing it has won the fight. But upon sensing a presence, it looks back, realizing its opponent hadn't given up the fight. Despite his injuries, Karazo gets up once more, preparing to face the enemy again. With a bruised face, he takes a deep breath, gathering what's left of his strength for the final confrontation. Facing the demon, he admits that yes, he is very afraid to fight such a powerful enemy. He continues, saying his body is trembling and his heart wants to abandon everything and just run away. He confesses to the creature that he's very afraid of getting hurt and also of ending up dead here. Hearing the confession, the demon questions him, not understanding why he fights despite being so afraid. With a determined look, he reveals that the fear of someone dying because of his inaction is even greater. Then he admits he's not useful, and that maybe he's just acting to ease his conscience. Because he's a coward, he says he can't stand the feeling of being scared without doing anything. Tired of the talk, the demon raises its hand and tells him to just die already. But suddenly, someone runs past at high speed, interrupting what would have been a fatal attack. Lying on the ground, Karazo looks up, wondering if the long, hard fight is finally over. In that same instant, a boot with yellow laces stomps hard on the ground, stopping right in front of him. Seeing the interference, the creature turns sharply to face the new opponent who has joined the battle. Looking ahead, the demon is confused by the figure that suddenly appeared for the confrontation. Right after, little Ellen leaps into the air, raising his toy hammer to attack the enemy. At this, the demon raises its wings and arms, preparing to defend against the blow from above. The boy's attack hits the creature's helmet head-on, shattering it into several pieces. Seeing the scene, Karazo is shocked, as a dark liquid oozes from its eyes, showing the damage. Witnessing the whole scene, the surrounding crowd is in complete shock at the unexpected outcome of the battle. With great determination, young Ellen prepares to speak to the warrior who saved everyone. At that moment, a boot lands firmly on the ground, marking the arrival of a mysterious figure. Then, the boy says that even though he's a coward, his heart is that of a true hero. With a big smile, he congratulates him, saying he successfully saved the little child. Hearing the praise, the man is completely paralyzed, with an expression of total surprise on his bruised face. After some time, the blue sky shows that the dust from the battle has finally started to settle in the city. Meanwhile, the hooded figures order a retreat, but one of them asks what they will do about the mission. In response, the leader states that the mission is no longer their priority. Shifting to the palace, a large golden gate begins to open slowly, revealing a figure. Right after, Goku, one of the king's 10 swords, emerges imposingly, showing off his extremely muscular physique. Back in the square, the tower clock shows the intense battle rages on without a break. With his hammer in hand, young Ellen faces the enemy, his determination to fight unwavering. Still recovering, Karazo watches from a distance, surprised by the little boy's courage in battle. Recovering from the blow, the creature stomps the ground hard, preparing for its next attack. Then, the demon yells that the boy has a lot of strength, but he's still just a brat. Charging forward, the creature realizes its small opponent is even faster than it imagined. But with a focused gaze, Ellen concentrates, remembering an even greater power he has faced before. In his mind, he recalls the overwhelming strength of a warrior far more powerful than this demon. Suddenly, the creature notices a different glow, surprised by what it sees approaching. Confident, the boy leaps into the air to attack, certain he can react to any of the enemy's moves. At that same moment, the demon bites his weapon, stopping the blow with its sharp teeth. Then, the creature throws him hard against the ground, creating a large crater on impact. Sitting in her spot, the examiner watches the entire fight with a calm and completely analytical gaze. Analyzing the scene, she sees the immense potential hidden within the young and brave warrior candidate. With a focused look, she continues to watch the boy, who keeps fighting with impressive determination. With his helmet broken, the demon pulls himself together, complaining about the pain from the boy's blow. With no other choice, he decides to use a more powerful ability, since he can't be helped now. Then, his hand bursts into flames, signaling he's about to unleash a devastating attack on everyone. But suddenly, his expression changes, and he yells for his distant companion to run. Confused, he turns, not understanding the reason for his partner's desperate scream for him to flee. Stopping in the square, a man slowly approaches, making the creature wonder what is happening. From a distance, the hooded figure desperately yells for him to get away as fast as possible. Looking to the side, the demon spots the new threat, finally understanding the reason for the panic. With firm steps, the figure from before finally arrives on the battlefield, revealing his imposing identity. Soon after, the Berserker warrior introduces himself, making the demon realize the Berserker is coming for him. Showing his boredom, the red-haired man says the capital is always a dull place. Upon seeing the figure, little Ellen is in shock, paralyzed by the legendary warrior's overwhelming presence. He recognizes the man, remembering he's seen him in action before in another battle. In his memories, the boy relives the image of the warrior fighting with absurd strength and speed. Frightened by the memory, he falls to the ground, trembling before the power he is about to witness. Understanding the situation, the demon finally realizes the danger approaching him with the warrior's arrival. Placing his hand on the ground, the creature prepares to make a drastic decision to escape the battle. He then admits there was a good reason his partner told him to flee this place. Immediately, he flaps his wings and flies into the sky, trying to escape the warrior as fast as possible. Leaving the city behind, he soars higher and higher, becoming a tiny dot in the sky. Seeing the scene, the people scream in desperation, begging for someone to stop the demon from getting away. But the warrior Goku just watches the demon, wondering what that red fly is doing in the sky. Hearing the people's plea, he finally focuses his gaze on the creature escaping into the sky. Then he stretches with a high kick, saying that if that's the case, he'll take care of it. He then stomps with absurd force, creating an impact wave that cracks the entire ground. At the same instant, a pillar of energy shoots into the heavens, making the whole city tremble intensely. Startled by the tremor, Ellen and a civilian lose their balance, nearly falling from the force of the impact. Crouched amidst the rubble, the warrior stares at the sky, preparing for his next move. Walking calmly, he moves away from the impact site as small pieces of rock float around him. He raises 3 fingers and says that just 3 should be enough for everything. With a swift movement, the warrior launches the 3 rocks toward the still fleeing demon. The stones fly with incredible speed, leaving a trail of energy behind them. The impact of the projectiles is so strong that it destroys part of a building near the main target. Trying to defend himself, the demon turns to block the attack, but it's too late to react. With a pained expression, he feels the projectile's impact easily breaking through his defenses. Hit head-on, the demon is completely disintegrated in the sky, leaving no trace behind. He complains that stones were enough to break his guard, not believing what happened. Still with his back turned, Goku questions if that was all he could do, showing his total disappointment. Yelling that it was boring, he cleans his ear, showing the fight wasn't a challenge. From a distance, Ellen watches everything in silence, completely shocked by the warrior's display of power. Just then, Jean runs toward him, asking if he's okay after all the commotion. She looks at the warrior, asking who that person with such overwhelming and terrifying power is. With a tear running down her cheek, she reveals he is the 3rd of the king's 10 swords. Then she says his real name is Berserker, as she watches him leave the square. Finally, she warns Ellen that he is a dangerous person and that he needs to be careful. Still frightened, Ellen tries to process everything he saw, understanding the immensity of that terrifying power. He remembers that this person, just like Hate, is one of the king's 10 swords. With wide eyes, he wonders why that person attacked Hate in the past. Suddenly, he turns and runs, remembering something important amidst all the confusion. Shouting for the bearded uncle, he finds Karazo on the ground, groaning in pain from his injuries. Running to him, the boy asks if he's okay, and the man says he is. Kneeling beside him, he praises the boy's strength and asks if anyone else was hurt. With a worried expression, Jean says that a candidate was seriously injured in the battle. She then reveals that she treated him and he should wake up soon, out of danger. Seeing the scene, Karazo is relieved, but Jean still watches the fallen man with some concern. concern. With a smile, he says it's a relief to know everyone is out of danger. From a distance, the examiner observes Karazo, who is now resting on the ground, recovering from the tough battle. Bowing, she thanks him for buying time, ensuring no one else was hurt there. Still on the ground, Karazo hears the examiner announce his scores in wisdom, virtue, and body. With a total of 23 points, she announces that he has failed the first exam again. Yelling angrily, he asks if she's mocking him, but the woman remains silent. Then she asks if applying old rules to the present would bring peace, confusing him with the question. She explains that rules exist to maintain order, and order exists to improve life. Continuing her speech, she says that rules are not absolute and need to adapt to the world's changes. With a surprised look, he hears that the essence of the exam is to test a warrior's qualities. She reveals that his confrontation with the demon was impressive, showing a warrior's great virtue. She then informs him that his score for the heart category has been corrected from 3 to 10 points. With wide eyes, he can barely believe what he just heard from the test examiner. With a total of 30 points, she announces that he has finally passed the first warrior exam. Congratulating him, she says his name, confirming that Corazzo Mernandi is now one of the approved candidates. With a small smile, he processes the news, still not believing his dream has finally come true. Just then, Ellen congratulates him, and the examiner announces that the boy also passed the rigorous test. Surprised, the boy asks if it's true, and she confirms it, saying she saw his qualifications as a warrior. Hearing the conversation, Corazzo watches them with a surprised expression, still processing all the good news. With a smile, the examiner praises him, saying he is in fact a pretty cool coward. Saying goodbye, the examiner says she'll be rooting for him and that she needs to adjust the third rule now. Watching her walk away, Corazzo is speechless, still trying to absorb everything that happened. With a sigh, he runs a hand over his face, feeling the weight of exhaustion and emotion. Under the blue sky, the city begins to calm down, the dust from the battle finally settling. Exhausted, he lies on the ground, spreading his arms and looking at the sky with a feeling of relief. Holding his soul blade, he thinks that despite wanting to give up, there's still a little attachment left. Soon after, the results of the first stage of the exam show Corazzo Mernandi's name as approved. As Jean tries to heal him, he screams in fear, begging not to be stabbed by her sword. Laughing at the scene, Ellen points at him, saying the uncle is really great and funny. With all candidates approved, the first phase of the warrior exam is finally successfully concluded. From a distance, the warrior Goku continues to clean his ear, still bored with the outcome of the situation. He observes the trio of approved candidates, who are now celebrating the positive result of the difficult warrior test together. Then, he remembers the little boy who faced hate in the past, showing surprising courage. Walking toward the examiner, he calls her by name, Rules, to ask an important question. Pointing at Ellen, he asks what the boy's score on the exam was and if he also passed. She replies that his total score was 35, which he considers average. With a look of disapproval, the warrior says no, completely disagreeing with the assessment that was made. With a smile, she reveals that the result would have been different if the score wasn't capped at 10. At that moment, an image of Ellen appears, questioning if he is a warrior or perhaps a true monster. Hearing the revelation, the warrior falls silent, with a look of great interest in the little boy. Then, he smiles, saying that as expected, it seems only he might be able to entertain him. Remembering hate, he thinks that his old rival left behind something very interesting, the young boy. Desperately fleeing his pursuers, the demon hides, panting, in a narrow city alley. Though badly wounded, he refuses to give up, telling himself he must survive at all costs. He then gathers his remaining strength and starts running through the empty streets, focused only on completing his mission. Changing scenes, Hate is reading a news report while Ellen and Jean sit at the table, waiting for any updates. He informs his companions that the demon from the first exam has escaped, and is now on the run. Hearing the news, Ellen approaches Jean and asks if she's worried about the monster's escape. While Jean remains silent, the boy becomes thoughtful, remembering his confrontation with that creature during the test. Recalling the fight, he explains that his blade's impact grows stronger with the evil in his opponent's heart. But he reveals that, despite the demon's evil, his weapon made him feel an indescribable emotion coming from it. Hearing this unexpected revelation, Jean stares at him in surprise, processing the strange information she just received. To change the subject, Ellen suggests the two of them could go shopping to lift their spirits and get some gear. Instantly, he looks at her with anticipation, eagerly awaiting her answer to his invitation to go out together. Soon after, the idea is enthusiastically accepted, signaling that the pair will finally have a well-deserved break. Following the plan, the two arrive in front of a large equipment store, ready to shop. As soon as they enter, they are greeted by the friendly owner of the place, who introduces himself as Monk, the local merchant. Looking at their clothes, Monk says they're too weak and offers them gigantic suits of armor, but Ellen complains about the size. The shopkeeper then quickly swaps the armor for a butler and maid outfit, which are now too tight for them. Insisting on making a sale, Monk has the pair try on Santa Claus outfits, leaving Jean visibly embarrassed by the situation. Completely exhausted by his persistence, she finally gives in and agrees to take the outfit just to end the madness. But Ellen decides to mix and match all the pieces, creating a look that leaves the shopkeeper shocked by the completely bizarre combination. With a determined look, he faces the shopkeeper, making it very clear he won't change his mind about his choice. Faced with such stubbornness, Monk can only lament, realizing it's impossible to argue with such a determined child. As they prepare to pay, Hate suddenly appears outside, interrupting the chaotic shopping session. Upon entering the store, he finds the bizarre scene and asks what exactly they were doing in there. Unable to answer, Jean turns completely red, looking away, dying of embarrassment over the whole situation. Completely confused by the scene, Hate tries to understand what's happening while Ellen admires his bizarre new look. After all the commotion, they leave the store without buying any new clothes, carrying only a bag of food. Walking through the city, Hate warns them to be careful, as the capital is a place where any carelessness can be dangerous. Ellen then takes the warning literally, concluding that he needs to buy a helmet to protect his nose. Ignoring his reasoning, Hate simply stops walking and tells the kids they have finally arrived at their destination. Reaching their destination, the trio comes face to face with a gigantic coliseum, the location for the second phase of the exam. With wide eyes, Ellen is completely impressed by the grandeur of the arena he is seeing for the first time. Upon entering, he remarks with surprise that there are many more people here than in the first phase of the great tournament. Jean then explains that this is where all the candidates who passed the previous stage gather. Listening to the conversation, Hate comments that he himself almost failed to meet the minimum qualification to be there with them. Noticing his sincerity, Ellen looks at his friend and thanks him for making it this far. At that moment, Indar approaches the group and bows in a deep gesture of respect and gratitude. Lifting his face, he smiles and formally introduces himself as one of the candidates they saved during the attack. He then thanks them, saying he would be dead if it weren't for their help during the demon's assault. Indar then approaches Ellen with a serious expression, leaving the boy confused by his sudden advance. Grasping the boy's hand tightly, he holds on firmly, showing the intensity of his admiration for him. He then declares with great enthusiasm that the boy was incredibly strong during the battle they fought together. Kneeling before him, Indar reveals that he admires his strength and now respects the boy for his incredible fighting power. Caught by surprise, Ellen becomes completely flustered, his face flushed, and he doesn't know how to react. As he squirms with embarrassment, Jean watches the scene, commenting with a smile on how compliments make him so awkward. Announcing that they are now rivals, Indar turns and walks away from the group to join the other competitors. While they watch the other candidates, Hate stands next to Jean, analyzing the crowd around them. Just then, a giant man in armor passes by, making Hate wonder if he's also a participant. The large warrior, named Hammer, glares at the group and complains that they should have said something before just disappearing. Observing the scene, a red-haired girl comments that it would be a shame for Indar if he died in an accident. As the atmosphere grows tense, Hate looks at his companions and warns them that the competition in this exam will be very fierce. Moving on, the three are interrupted by a familiar voice calling out to them, causing the group to stop walking. Confused by the call, the trio turns around, and Hate wonders aloud who that person could be. Upon recognizing the figure, Hate's expression changes drastically, showing a clear sign of irritation and total discomfort. A figure with long blonde hair then walks toward them, getting closer and closer to the trio. Approaching them, the blonde man greets them, saying it's been about 3 years since they last saw each other. This newcomer is revealed to be Jin Ripon, an old acquaintance who will now also be participating in the same exam. Hate then asks if Jin will also be participating, and he confirms that he graduated and is finally going to attempt the exam. Jin explains that graduates from the training center skipped the first phase, leaving Ellen confused since he didn't know what that was. Grabbing his shoulder, Jin provocatively asks if Hate is really trying to take the exam again. Continuing his taunts, Jin reminds Hate that he ran away from the training center and is still trying to pass the exam. Without a word, Hate just glares at his rival, his eyes shining intensely from the direct taunt. Slapping him on the back, Jin tells him not to make that face, as he supports people like him. Keeping a hand on his shoulder, Jin continues his speech full of false praise for his former colleague. Leaning close to his ear, Jin reveals that he likes people like that because they're easy to push around with just a little pressure. Laughing loudly, Jin turns and walks away with his group, leaving Hate behind while Ellen watches the scene. Sensing the tension in the air, Ellen glances to the side with a worried expression about what just happened. After the taunt, Hate declares that in this exam, he has no choice but to finally pass. Hearing the firm declaration, Ellen looks up, observing the serious and determined stance his companion has just taken. Suddenly, a loud noise catches everyone's attention, caused by a heavy stomp in the center of the large arena. Instantly, all the participants turn toward the sound, wondering what that was. In a brutal entrance, Goku, the Berserker warrior, charges forward and knocks down several candidates with a single powerful blow. Shocked, the candidates recognize the newcomer, who sits down calmly as everyone comments on the Berserker warrior's presence. With his eyes glowing intensely, the huge red-haired warrior glares at the crowd of candidates with an intimidating gaze. In the middle of the crowd, Ellen looks up, observing the imposing figure of the warrior who has just arrived. With a smile, Goku introduces himself as the exam supervisor, though he thinks to himself, it's not the right time yet. Seeing the new supervisor, Hate's group realizes that an extremely difficult and dangerous exam awaits all the candidates. At that, Jean explains to Ellen that the supervision rotates annually among the 10 strongest warriors in the kingdom. Continuing her explanation, she says that the content of the test changes completely depending on who is in charge of the exam. With a worried look, Jean reveals that the exams led by the Berserker always record the highest death rate of all. In the middle of the crowd, a candidate interrupts him and asks how he will deal with the infiltrated demon spy. Hearing the question, Goku just stares at the man in silence, showing no immediate reaction to the issue raised. Ignoring the question, he simply yells for rules to start the exam, leaving the candidate completely confused by the lack of a response. As the man insists, Goku thinks to himself that by becoming a warrior, he will finally be able to solve that problem. Turning his face, he responds with disdain, questioning aloud why he should care about that now. He then declares that the exam will continue and that candidates who capture the demon will receive extra points. Soon after, Rules points her finger forward, activating an ability that spreads throughout the entire combat arena. She explains that everyone's presence there means they agree to the rules, making the agreement a source of power. Instantly, a device materializes on the wrist of each candidate, attaching itself firmly to everyone present. Looking at her arm, Jean analyzes the strange artifact that suddenly appeared, not understanding its function. Looking at his own wrist, Hate also sees the same mysterious object that appeared on all the other candidates. Beside him, Ellen observes the bracelet on his arm and asks aloud what it is. With her back to the crowd, Rules explains that it is a special bracelet that will decide the outcome of the exam. Then, she reveals with her red eyes that the condition to pass is to have a green light on the bracelet. Continuing her explanation, she says that by subduing the demonic beasts, the bracelet will finally react in some way. Demonstrating the mechanic, a green light illuminates the device on her wrist for everyone to see how it works. At this, a candidate questions where they would find beasts in the capital, but Goku just says the place is boring. With a smile, he says that to have some fun, they will need to go to a location outside the big city. He then reveals that the exam location will be on the northern border, in a dangerous forest full of beasts. Before the crowd, it is announced that everyone's mission will be to simply go there and hunt the beasts. In the middle of the arena, a mysterious hooded figure remains silent, observing all the other candidates from a distance. Then, from under the hood, a single yellow eye glows intensely in the darkness, revealing its sinister presence. The explanation begins, revealing that the Soul Blade is a special weapon materialized from the emotions of the user's heart. Only a small number of people can manifest this weapon, and these individuals are known as true warriors. That's why candidates who have already awakened theirs become favorites, turning the exam into a mere formality. Shifting to the forest, it's revealed that 3 Soul Blade users are currently preparing for the grand exam. Running desperately through the dense woods, the candidates try to escape a relentless threat. Then, a giant plant-like monster suddenly appears, chasing Ellen and Jean with its sharp tentacles. As they flee, a desperate Jean screams, asking where Corazzo Mernandi is to help them escape the creature. Just then, she notices invisible footprints and realizes he's running away, causing Ellen to yell that he's a coward. Tired of running, Ellen stops and turns to finally face the enormous creature chasing them. Raising his hand, he concentrates to summon his Blade of Purity and fight the monster head-on. Soon after, his weapon materializes in his hands, taking the form of a large toy hammer. Without hesitation, the boy lunges forward and strikes one of the creature's tentacles with a powerful blow from his weapon. But despite the impact, the creature shows no visible damage, completely resisting the direct attack. In the same instant, the creature uses its other tentacles to grab the boy, trapping him with great force. As they're dragged through the forest, the pair screams desperately while Karazo laments the situation they've gotten into. Arriving at the Forest of Beasts, the dangerous location for the second phase of the exam is finally revealed to everyone. There, Goku explains that the place is an abandoned land, but it's filled with very strong demonic beasts. In the center of the forest, he reveals the existence of a giant tree that has been there for 3,000 years. He instructs everyone to hunt beasts to change their bracelet's color and then gather at the giant tree. The time limit is 48 hours, and only those with a green bracelet at the end will pass. Without any questions, all the candidates silently prepare for the start of the dangerous and deadly exam. As Goku watches the candidates, one of them approaches him, but nothing seems out of the ordinary at first. Suddenly, a giant snake appears and lunges at the candidate, who is completely unprepared and unable to react. With a swift move, the creature simply swallows the man, pulling him up into the trees in seconds. Shocked by the scene, the other candidates scream in terror as the man is carried away by the gigantic demonic beast. Goku just smiles, warning that if they're careless, that's exactly what will happen to all of them. Desperate, Ellen runs forward and yells for them to save the man captured by the creature, but a white-haired man stops him, explaining that everyone there are candidates who want to test their strength. Turning to the boy, he says that interfering would be an insult to those seeking to prove their worth. Hearing the warning, Ellen stops and stares at the man with a serious expression, processing what he just heard. Still processing what he heard, Hate remains silent, just watching the situation unfold before his eyes. Then, he reflects to himself that even if it's an insult to the warriors, it would be good if they were saved. But he tells Ellen not to worry, stating that the most skilled will be able to escape that danger on their own. Meanwhile, Goku announces to everyone that the exam's objective isn't to collect the heads of demonic beasts. He clarifies that what they really want are the other candidates' bracelets with the green light on. With a smile, he reveals that hunting weakened humans after they've fought monsters is also a valid option. Hearing the cruel revelation, Ellen stares at the supervisor with an expression of pure indignation at the test's rule. Seeing the situation, Jean suggests they team up, since cooperation doesn't seem to be against the rules. At that, Ellen agrees with the idea, and Hate tries to join them, forming a trio for the challenge. From a distance, two candidates watch the group, commenting on the powerful soul blade Ellen used against the demon. Soon after, they notice that Jean is from the Graphon family, and that Hate also seems to have a soul blade. Beside them, another group of candidates also watches the trio, analyzing their future targets in the forest. A feeling of envy arises among them as the vast and dangerous forest stretches out before everyone. The scene changes to a hand resting on the ground, indicating the extreme exhaustion of a warrior in combat. Revealing the future, the trio of warriors appears completely defeated and exhausted on the dark forest floor. Crying desperately, Hate apologizes non-stop, but Ellen announces that the demonic beasts are finally gone. At this, Jean explains that the attacks don't work because the beasts act on instinct, with no malice in their hearts. But Hate complains that he almost died anyway, loudly questioning the strange patterns of that soul blade. Sitting on the ground, Ellen continues to hold his hammer, still processing why his attack didn't work. Then, Hate simply replies that he doesn't know the reason either, leaving the question open between them. Looking at the weapon, Ellen calmly explains that he won't hit the creatures because they aren't evil. Completing his thought, he states with total conviction that his own soul blade told him that. Faced with this bizarre answer, Jean and Hate fall completely silent, not knowing what to say. Soon after, Jean changes the subject, reminding them they need to focus on a way to pass the exam. Hearing the suggestion, Hate leans against a log, stating he has a method for capturing the beasts, but he's shocked by the idea of a talking soul blade, trying to understand what that really means. Questioning the logic, he wonders if this is just a form of expression because he's a child. As he thinks about this, the star on Ellen's hammer begins to pulse slowly, indicating some kind of reaction. Changing scenery, the vast forest stretches out, showing the scale of the challenge awaiting all candidates. Meanwhile, another group of candidates is already exhausted, with the girl complaining that her legs are hurting. Hammer then reveals that, according to rumors, demons released strong beasts into the forest, to prevent a human invasion. Exhausted, the red-haired girl complains that the examiner just had to be the Berserker, the reason for the high death rate. Indar just watches the scene in silence, showing no reaction to the difficulty of the exam they face. With a fearful expression, the girl continues, saying the situation is even worse than they imagine. At the base of the great tree, Goku meets with Rules and his assistants, preparing for the next phase. He then says that the candidates who have arrived should be enough for what he has in mind. Announcing he's leaving, he says goodbye to Rules and starts to walk away, leaving everyone confused. The assistants then ask where he's going, and are told that it's just a tradition. With a firm step, Goku stomps on the ground, preparing to use his full brute force. Using his legs, he leaps with incredible force, soaring towards the mountaintop. The impact of his jump is so powerful that he reaches the summit in seconds, disappearing completely from view. Meanwhile, Hate continues trying to understand how Ellen's soul blade works, looking for a way to use it. Caught by surprise, he looks up, realizing that something large and dangerous is approaching them. Suddenly, the same creature from before appears before the trio, ready to attack the group once more. Startled, Hate yells that it's the same beast and warns that they've been caught and need to run quickly. Moving at high speed through the dark forest, the view draws ever closer to a specific target. Crossing through the dense woods, the point of view continues its relentless advance toward the warriors ahead, until it finally reveals the trio of warriors in the distance. They are completely unaware of what is about to happen to them. Meanwhile, the assistants explain that the death rate in Goku's exams isn't just because of the test's difficulty. Back with the trio, Hate is in a total panic, completely terrified by the new threat that has suddenly appeared. Beside him, Jean also despairs, screaming in fear at the situation they're now facing. Right behind them, Ellen also reacts with panic, realizing the gravity of the imminent danger surrounding them. From the mountaintop, Goku descends in a surprise attack, launching several projectiles at all the candidates. On the ground, Ellen throws himself to the side, narrowly dodging the attacks raining down from the sky. Then, the exam supervisor lands with a powerful impact, stopping right in front of the frightened boy. Revealing the tradition, an assistant explains that Goku always personally duels the strongest candidates of each class. With a wild smile, he says that, for this class, the boy seems to be the one chosen for the challenge. He then orders the boy to follow him, warning that he's going to test him to see if he's worthy. At that, one of the assistants is shocked, questioning the idea of a death match against a mere exam candidate. Arguing that it's absurd, the other explains that the 10 swords of the king can do whatever they want, but the first insists that even they should have limits, especially when it involves an innocent child. Interrupting the conversation, Rules asks what score they think Goku got to pass his own exam. Hearing it was only 30 points, the assistant is completely shocked by the warrior's low score. Then, she reveals he scored 0 in virtue and passed with the minimum score, nearly failing the test. Realizing the flaw in the system, the assistant clenches his fist, saying the whole situation has been ridiculous from the start. She then explains that the exam allows evil people with incredible skills to pass the test as well. Continuing her reasoning, she says that most warriors have flaws but make up for them with their skills. He then asks his colleague to think carefully about the true meaning of this great warrior trial. He reflects that humans who cling to one belief their entire lives can't be considered true adults. That's why Goku attacks without hesitation, proving that he doesn't fit the conventional adult mold. On the battlefield, Ellen finds himself completely surrounded by projectiles launched by the powerful exam proctor. Seeing the imminent danger, Jean and Hate jump in front of the boy to protect him from the direct attack. Then, with a wild and threatening smile, Goku prepares to begin his traditional, brutal fight. Staring at the warrior, Ellen asks in shock what the famous Berserker warrior was doing there right then. Beside them, Hate is visibly terrified by the warrior's presence, even considering running from the fight. But Goku ignores their reaction and says that for this group, the 3 of them seem like good opponents. He then points directly at the group and orders them to follow him to test their warrior qualifications. Not understanding the order, Ellen just stares at the warrior with a confused expression, wondering what it really means. In that same instant, the proctor simply grabs the boy and starts dragging him away from his companions. Seeing her friend being taken, Jean stands frozen, just watching the scene with a look of pure worry. Right behind her, Hate also reacts with surprise, not knowing how to act in this completely unexpected situation. Stopping, Goku turns and prepares a powerful strike aimed at Ellen and his 2 friends. Before the attack can land, a barrier forms in front of the group, blocking the powerful strike's path. The protection then expands rapidly, creating a large sphere to shield the 3 young warriors from the attack. With a clenched fist, Jean positions herself in front of the group, preparing for any incoming attack. Beside her, Hate also takes a defensive stance, gritting his teeth at the intensity of the confrontation. But the Proctor's blow finally hits the barrier, creating a shockwave that destroys everything around them. Thrown to the ground by the force of the blow, Jean says she couldn't even see the attack because of the shockwave. Stepping away from the group, Goku says they are still far below the standard he expected to find here, but he praises their talent, promising to fight them when they get stronger in the near future. Completely defeated, Jean and Hate just watch in silence as the warrior prepares to finally leave. With a single step, Goku launches himself into the air, preparing for another one of his leaps. In the blink of an eye, he throws a rope, captures Ellen, and disappears with him into the darkness of the forest. Fallen on the ground, Jean and Hate remain in shock, trying to understand what just happened before their eyes. Desperate, Jean screams that Ellen has been taken and they need to save him, but a noise interrupts her. The sound comes from a nearby bush, catching the pair's attention as they go on alert for a new danger. With a tense expression, Hate turns toward the sound, preparing for a possible new threat. Moving to the base of the great tree, the assistants watch the arrival of the first candidates to complete the task. With a satisfied smile, Rules observes the arrival of the first to pass the exam, carrying a huge creature on his back. Then, a man throws a giant boar to the ground, showing his green bracelet and confirming he passed the test. This is Balrog Destroyer, who brought the animal's body just to show off and prove he's different. With an air of superiority, he throws the carcass to the ground and boasts about his strength to everyone. He then asks if he was the first to arrive, but Rules surprises him with a no. Pointing deep into the forest, Rules informs him that the first person to arrive is already waiting for them. This first candidate is Seratina, a blonde-haired warrior who was waiting silently for the others to arrive. Annoyed at being second, Balrog complains, but Rules reminds him that passing is only confirmed at the very end. Regaining his composure, he comments that this exam seems to have a lot of problematic people in this dangerous competition. Then, he looks at her seriously, telling her not to play dumb, because the structure is clear. The real goal isn't to hunt beasts, but a survival test focused on the other candidates' bracelets. Recalling the rules, he understands that Goku's declarations are forcing everyone to fight each other. As his eyes turn red, Rules realizes that the candidate hunters are already starting to appear in the forest. Changing scenes, the hunt for bracelets intensifies, with the weakest becoming easy targets. Just then, two figures emerge from the shadows, revealing themselves as the hyenas who hunt the weaker competitors. Immediately, Jean and Hate prepare for combat, facing the new enemies approaching to attack. Meanwhile, other candidates like Indar also move through the forest, hunting their prey to pass the exam. Elsewhere, a pair of hunters surrounds a new target, preparing to steal their bracelet and secure a spot. Confused by the situation, Jean asks aloud why they are being attacked by other participants. The attacker then replies with a smile that he's doing it simply to pass the test and become a warrior. With a smile, the man says he saw the boy's power in the first exam and considers him the top competitor. He reveals that he overheard their conversation and knows the girl's soul blade is a support type, eliminating her as a threat. Outraged, Jean yells that people like him should have been eliminated in the first phase, but the hunter ignores her. At another point in the forest, Indar catches his breath, preparing for the fight that's about to begin. He reflects that usually only 1 or 2 soul blade users participate in the exam, and they always stand out. Analyzing the situation, he realizes this exam has an abnormally high number of soul blade users competing against each other. His opponent then reveals his own weapon, saying that if he defeats him, he'll also have a chance to pass the exam. No hard feelings. The new enemy says he's just following the proctor's rules and prepares to attack. With a confident smile, the candidate Munhadog takes his combat stance, ready for the fight against his opponent. In a distant location, Goku continues to drag Ellen, taking the boy to an isolated spot in the vast forest. As he's being dragged, the boy tries to resist, but the proctor's strength is far greater than his. Arriving at a clearing, Goku finally stops and says this place will do for what he has in mind. He then orders the boy to get ready to fight, warning that he could get hurt if he doesn't warm up. On the ground, Ellen supports himself with his hands, panting and not understanding why he's being treated this way. Confused, he asks why the proctor is doing this, seeking an answer for the strange treatment he's received. Running towards him, Ellen asks why he attacked his companions, the other warriors who were there. Staring at the boy, Goku just remains silent, not answering the question he just asked. Then, the boy says that as warriors, they should be comrades, but the proctor shows no reaction. With a determined look, he stands up and firmly asks where Hate is right now, demanding answers. Hearing the question, Goku just stares him down, daring the boy to do something about the situation. Turning his back, the proctor simply ignores the question, leaving the boy even more irritated by the lack of answers. With a clenched fist, Ellen prepares for combat, facing the proctor with a look of pure determination. Then, Goku charges forward and lands a devastating blow to the boy's face, who has no time to react. The impact is so strong that the boy screams in pain, completely overwhelmed by the blow. Holding the boy by the face, Goku reminds him that he told him to warm up before the fight started. Despite the intense pain, Ellen manages to break free, glaring at the proctor with an expression of pure fury and hatred. The next instant, he lands a swift blow to his opponent's face, who is caught by surprise. The blow sends Goku flying, revealing the surprising strength the boy hides behind his appearance. Flying through the forest, the proctor crashes through the trees, showing the incredible power of the hit he just took. He finally smashes into a large tree, breaking it in half with the force of the impact. Still panting, Ellen faces his opponent, hearing that getting what you want is a right reserved exclusively for the winner. With a glazed look, he processes the harsh reality of the situation he's in during this confrontation. Then Goku grips his weapon and says that if the boy wants the answer, he'll have to fight for it. With a challenging smile, he takes his stance, warning that to get what he wants, he needs to survive the fight. Hearing the challenge, Ellen faces the proctor with a look of pure determination, ready for the great battle. Changing scenes, the forest is revealed once more, showing the other challenges the candidates are facing. In a nearby stream, a waterfall hides the dangers awaiting the other participants of the warrior exam. In this place, the same giant snake from before moves silently, preparing to strike a new, unsuspecting prey. But suddenly, the creature stops, sensing a strange presence approaching it from behind. In the middle of the woods, the next instant, the snake's head explodes from a single blow, revealing the mysterious attacker's strength. With the creature defeated, a hooded figure emerges, revealed as the person who just slayed the beast. This is an unknown candidate who complains that he almost died in the fight, showing just how strong the creature was. Approaching the waterfall, the candidate splashes water on his face to clean up after his intense and dangerous battle. Complaining about the smell, he throws his cloak on the ground, saying he can't wear it anymore after everything that's happened. Stretching his arms, he wonders how far the exam has progressed and if he's falling behind. So he decides he first needs to see the other candidate's current situation to plan his next moves. Climbing a rock, he uses water from a waterfall to create steps and quickly reach the top. With a leap, he reaches the mountain's summit, gaining a prime view of the entire forest below. From there, he can observe all the other candidates, carefully analyzing their every move. With a confident smile, he prepares to choose his next target and continue his hunt for the green bracelets. Using his sharp vision, he watches the fights happening across the vast forest. He can see Indar fighting Munhadog in an intense battle for survival and to pass the exam. Elsewhere, Jean and Hate continue to fight the bounty hunters who attack them in the forest. And further away, he also watches Goku's fight against the small boy, the candidate named Ellen. With a full overview, he analyzes each battle, considering which would be the best one for him to interfere in. He concludes there are 3 interesting battles going on, but he needs to choose very carefully which one to join. Although the Berserker's fight is the most intriguing, he decides to avoid it, as it's too dangerous for him. Focusing his gaze, he begins to watch the movement of a group of candidates moving through the forest. From above, he sees Jin and his followers, analyzing their posture and how they are behaving during the exam. With a subtle smile, the blonde man seems to sense he's being watched, but continues on his way, unfazed. Still watching, the mysterious candidate concludes that this will be the most boring fight of all. Meanwhile, Indar remembers the harsh words he heard in the past, telling him he was useless. He recalls his former master, an imposing figure who always pushed him beyond his limits. His master's words echo, saying it wasn't about trying hard, but about doing well. With a smile, the master reminded him not just to try, but to achieve his goals. Lying on the ground, he recalls the harsh advice that motivated him to always seek perfection in his actions. The memory that effort without results is just self-satisfaction hits him hard, renewing his determination for the fight. Trapped by chains, he struggles with all his might to break free and continue the fight against his opponent. With a quick, precise movement, he uses a knife to cut the bandages on his hands and free himself. Then, he charges forward, spinning his blades in a powerful attack that shatters the chains around him. In the end, he manages to destroy his opponent's weapon, leaving only its pieces scattered on the forest floor. With victory assured, he faces his enemy, impressed by the power of the soul blade he just fought. With his weapon reconstructed, Munhadog says that it brings his opponent's bad memories to the surface during battle. He explains that its thorns awaken the terror a person has already felt, as every human has their fears. He adds that feeling fear just makes him a normal human, trying to destabilize his strong opponent. With a smirk, Indar retorts, saying he really knows how to pick the most irritating words. Shifting scenes, the fight between Jean and the bounty hunters intensifies in the forest. The man attacks repeatedly, surprised that her support weapon can so easily block all his strikes. He doesn't understand how a support soul blade can stop his attacks, since it has no offensive power, but Jean defends herself masterfully, perfectly blocking each attack with her cross-shaped sword. With a determined look, she says she received an elite education in swordsmanship, which makes her strong. Suddenly, Hate throws a wooden log at one of the bounty hunters, who is caught by surprise. The log hits the man square in the head, and he screams in pain from the unexpected impact. Right after, Hate charges forward and knocks down both bounty hunters with a single blow, surprising everyone with his strength. Impressed, he wonders how he managed to take someone down in one hit, not understanding his own strength. Jean then explains that her blade's ability can temporarily increase her allies' strength and speed. As she decides whether to heal them, Hate says he needs to conserve energy and that herbs will be enough for them. Setting healing aside, Jean turns and focuses on her priority, remembering they need to save their friend. Meanwhile, Ellen continues his intense fight, breathless but determined not to give up against the supervisor. With a bruised face, he glares at his opponent, preparing for another round of strikes and attacks. Holding his weapon firmly, he concentrates for the next attack, gathering all his strength to fight. Then he charges once more, running toward Goku with his hammer in hand, ready to strike. Watching his approach, the supervisor notices the boy is using the same attack method as before. Without moving, he braces for the blow, determined not to be caught by surprise again. Analyzing the attack, he sees the boy's tactic, trying to use his backpack as a distraction. The boy throws the backpack into the air, trying to create an opening to land a direct hit on his opponent. But Goku dodges the attack and manages to land a powerful blow on the boy, catching him in midair. Grabbing his face, Goku says the attack was good, but still too weak for him. With a brutal blow, he slams the boy to the ground, showing the difference in strength between the two warriors. The impact is so strong that the boy is driven into the ground, screaming in pain from the force of the attack. While the boy is down, Goku approaches, preparing to end the fight with one last blow. Then he moves in and lands a final blow, sending Ellen flying and ending the combat for good. The boy is thrown with brutal force, bouncing off the ground several times before finally stopping, completely defeated by the blow. Still standing, Goku realizes the boy's ability isn't limited to his soul blade, but also enhances his body. With a clenched fist, he acknowledges the boy's incredible resilience, still standing even after so many hits. He admits that an ordinary child would have already died from the force of the attacks he's delivered so far. Despite being impressed, the supervisor just stares at the boy in silence, showing no other reaction to the fight. Sitting on the ground, Ellen hears Goku say that not even he knows what's truly in his heart. Confused, he watches the warrior approach, not understanding what those mysterious words really mean. Then, Goku explains that the heart doesn't exist in a clear form. It's just a way to categorize emotions. He continues, saying that in anger there is sadness, and in love there is obsession, showing the complexity of human feelings. That's why Soul Blade users train to make their hearts simple and clear, verbalizing what they feel to become strong. But Rules just comments that she actually uses the scale because it's a trendy item. Still on the ground, Ellen continues to process the lesson, trying to understand the true meaning of the words he heard. Pointing at him, Goku advises him to be honest with his heart and with what he truly feels. He says the boy needs to understand what he wants to become and what he truly desires for himself. With his head down, Ellen begins to reflect on his true emotions, searching for the answer within himself. With his eyes shining, Ellen finally finds his answer, understanding what he truly wants for his future as a warrior. Then, he declares out loud that he wants to save everyone like a true warrior, revealing his great goal. But upon hearing the answer, Goku charges forward with a powerful blow, ready to continue his harsh training. With a devastating kick, he launches a wave of energy toward the boy, questioning how he will do it. The boy is hit head-on by the attack, as the supervisor asks how he intends to save everyone. With a red glint in his eyes, he focuses, preparing for another exchange of blows with the supervisor. But Goku charges again, leaping to deliver another powerful downward strike at the boy. Ellen tries to defend himself with his hammer, but the supervisor's blow is much stronger and hits him. The impact of the attack sends the boy flying, creating a huge crater in the ground with its force. From a distance, the power of the blow is visible, creating a large explosion of energy in the middle of the forest. The shockwave spreads, showing the scale of the power that was was unleashed in that single powerful strike. The clearing's ground is completely destroyed, with cracks spreading across the entire area of the intense combat. Lying in the middle of the crater, Ellen leans on his hammer, completely exhausted, but still determined to go on. Approaching, Goku says that the lack of a clear method limits his dream, questioning processing the threat he just made. His eyes transform, showing the intensity of the rage that consumes him in that moment of great fury. His body begins to throb, reacting to his emotion and preparing to unleash an even greater power. His hand moves toward his hammer, which also begins to pulse in sync with his heart and his rage. In the distance, Jean senses her friend's presence, realizing he's in that direction of the great forest. Following the noise, the pair runs through the forest, getting closer and closer to the site of the intense battle. Arriving at the clearing, Jean shouts Ellen's name, shocked by the scene before her eyes. With a look of astonishment, she stares at what's happening, unable to believe what she's seeing. Goku just watches them in silence, showing no reaction to the arrival of new spectators in the arena. Analyzing the situation, he stares at them, wondering who the two figures who just arrived are. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Jin and his group find Corazzo Mernandi and a few other candidates. With a smile, Jin greets him, surprised to find him there, but Corazzo doesn't seem at all happy about the reunion. Soon after, Jean and Hate also arrive on the scene, coming face to face with the unfolding situation. Seeing Jin, Hate is shocked, wondering what the hell was happening there with all those candidates. He then notices that the others are tied up, questioning the bizarre situation he's found in the forest. Back in the clearing, Goku continues to watch the scene, waiting for the boys' next move. A new strength begins to emanate from Ellen's body as he concentrates to release all his power. In a white space, the boy sits in silence, entering a state of deep meditation and concentration. There, he finally understands the true power of his weapon, the powerful and unique Blade of Purity. With a nod, he accepts his destiny, preparing to use all his power in the battle. Focusing all his power, he points his weapon and declares that true evil stands right before him. Hearing this declaration, Goku turns with a surprised expression, unable to believe what he just heard. Right after, he looks at him seriously and starts to say what the boy really is to him. Unintimidated, the boy stares back and asks who he is, showing his great and renewed determination. Then, a new and powerful energy explodes from the boy's body, engulfing everything around in a flash of light.